We're on. Turner, can you hear us? You guys? All
Yes.
right. Dr. Jolly, looks like we are back on whenever you're ready.
All right, so we're back in session. We've got the support group here. Dr. Curley, am I turning this over to you or to
Absolutely.
Mr. James?
We're going to turn it over to Turner. I think Turner's got two folks for us. So whoever you've got up first.
Okay, we're going to talk about Dr. Sedlicek. She's coming to the board to get okay to go back to work full time. She previously got a vote of confidence from the executive committee on September the 10th, a couple of months ago. You know, since then, since June 4th, when she got advocacy to work 32 hours per week, she's had 7 tests. All of them have been negative, 0 missed check-ins. She's abiding by her contract, fully involved in the support group and doing a great job. So I'll turn her over to the board.
All right, so
I think we're ready for Julie, and I'll tell the board we kept thinking if we had any reason for an emergency hearing, which we thought a couple times we were going to try to get Julie in faster. So she's been patiently waiting for us.
Yeah, for about a month, but things are going well. I'm working at CVS in various locations in Northwest Arkansas, and I'm just ready to get back to the full 40 hours a week.
We've got no issues with it. And actually, Julie, so full time, you can do even more than 40. I don't know that you want to tell your employer that, but we generally tap out at 50 hours a week. We've got a couple of folks who do like a 7 on 7 off that we've worked with, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily an absolute 40. So if there's a week and they go, well, we've got you scheduled 42, you're not going to be in conflict with us.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
okay, so this was 20 hours a week back in April, 32 hours a week in June, and now the request and the support group is advocating. The board staff has no issues with this request to go back to full time. So any questions, comments from the board? Dr. Sedlicek?
I'm just ready to get back to work 40 hours a week.
So we'll be looking for a motion to approve the request for Dr. Sedlicek to go full-time, 40 hours a week.
Motion to approve for Dr. Sedlicek to go back to work. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Newsom, a second by Dr. Mack. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right. Congrats, Julie. I think, Ashley, do you want to just send her a letter reflecting that? We'll shoot you a letter, but we'll mark you that you are good to go for full time today.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. And then Turner, I think the only other one you had was Brent Roberts. This will be his first appearance for the board. So they'll want a little bit of his history.
Yep. Okay. So Dr. Roberts, he came to us. His preliminary consent order was signed on 10/10/2022. The pharmacy support group contract was signed on 10/10/2022. He attended treatment at Bradford Health Centers. Everything that I got back from Bradford, that he fully participated in his treatment, did a great job down there. We got his letter from his therapist to return to work on September the 6th of 2023. The executive committee voted in support of advocacy for him to return to work on September the 10th, a couple of months ago. Dr. Roberts, I always tell the board the honest to goodness truth, and they never hold anything against you. But, I think the first meeting that Dr. Roberts was supposed to attend, I think he just got back from treatment and he was with a bunch of friends. He missed the first one. But he's been to everyone since. He's fully, he had a couple of issues at first getting in contact with all the executive committee members to talk to them because they wanted to get to know Dr. Roberts. And Dr. Roberts went out and made the phone calls, talked to them, has made some good support friends in the group, and is doing the deal. I love it when he shares. He's had 26 tests since he's entered the support group. And, this is sort of crazy to me. He's one of the few I've ever seen. He's had 26 tests, 0 check-ins, and all 26 have been negative. No dilutes, no out of range, anything. They've all been good. He's been patiently waiting to go back to work. He tried to go back to work like 2 or 3 months into it. The executive committee reminded him that, hey, you need to get another job and work a little bit, make sure your sobriety's strong, your foundation's strong. He accepted that and waited a while, got all of his affairs in order, found another job with Walmart and is doing the deal. I present Dr. Roberts to the board.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So, Dr. Roberts, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of what led up to your involvement with the support group and how you've been doing the last few months. Just provide us with a little bit of background and some current information for today.
Will do. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for letting me get to talk to you today. I guess this all goes back, I'll try to keep it short. All goes back to when I was in pharmacy school. I went to UAMS, first 2 years in Little Rock, my second 2 years in Fayetteville, from 2012 to 2016. In 2015, I actually, on St. Patrick's Day, drank and drove and received a DWI-1. Let Dr. Kirtley know at that time, let the College of Pharmacy know at that time as well, and moved forward. Graduated in 2016, started working with Walmart. I've only been employed with Walmart since graduating from pharmacy school. In August of 2022, I was in Hot Springs and received another DWI-2. And after spending the night in jail, I contacted my boss at Walmart and then immediately contacted Dr. Kirtley and asked, hey, what do I need to do? And that's when I went to Bradford Health about a week later and did my stint with Bradford Health. And then in October,
Dr. Roberts, you're breaking up a little bit. I want to see maybe frozen.
He's frozen.
We'll give it just a second, see if it'll kind of catch up.
You're frozen. I told him to log out and log back in.
Okay. Yeah, we'll give it a second. Turner, while we're waiting on him, I'll tell you something that I've said at a couple of our district meetings as a personal observation. Oftentimes we see an uptick in reports of drug or alcohol issues, behavior issues, anything else, oftentimes from Thanksgiving and through New Year's when families get together. My observation as of recent has been in trying to find places for people to get evals or treatment. Even the facilities, a couple of them we deal with, have said it is an earlier trend this year. Like COVID is over and people are tired of antics or issues and it's coming up earlier.
Mm.
I don't know if you've seen any of that in your practice or not.
Well, I'm not in the therapy side so much anymore where I work, but I know my wife's private practice has had an uptick.
Yeah,
A very, very big uptick.
that's kind of what I've heard from, dealing with like Cornerstone and Palmetto. They both are basically telling me they're full.
Yeah, and it's the younger people.
Yes.
We're seeing a lot of uptick between 18 and 35 probably.
Yeah. Goodness. I saw Brent pop back up for a second, then he disappeared on me again. Here he comes.
Hey, Brant, just use your audio and try not to do
Yeah,
camera.
there we go.
All right, I am terribly sorry about that.
Hey,
y'all.
Brant. Hey, Brant, don't use your video, use audio because that's what's happening. Your audio.
Yeah, there we go. I bet we will be able to keep up with you on the audio side.
Okay, this sounds good.
So we heard you made your phone call when you got out of jail to me and asked what to do. And of course, I told you we want to order and send you for an eval.
That's right. Yes, and so that's when I went to Bradford Health in Alabama. I did that. I went probably, I want to say anywhere from 4 to 7 days after we spoke. They do their intakes on Sundays. And I did that. I participated in the treatment. And then I was released in October of 2022. And then that's actually when I signed my contract with the support group. It was in October 10th of 2022.
And you said you had been doing something else at Walmart. What have you been doing in your time there?
All right, so yeah, so from October to basically the middle of January, I actually was not working.
Sure.
And that's when the board, or sorry, excuse me, the support group, let me know that I needed to get back to work and do that first before I could try to come back as a pharmacist. And so I reached out to my prior employer, and I was like, hey, is there something that I can do with Walmart that's not being a pharmacist? But Walmart's been so good to me. It's been a great company for me. And so the first about 4 months I worked in user acceptance testing. So basically any updates that we did on our computer systems, I would test those updates and just make sure there was no bugs that were going on before they, got sent out to the company. So yeah, that was the first 4 months. And then since then, I've been working kind of on the HR side of things where I help with the hiring and onboarding of pharmacists actually for the company.
So is your plan, if you are allowed to go back to work, to return back to work there?
Yes, that is correct.
So especially for our couple of new board members, generally whenever we have advocacy from the support group, the board is answering 2 questions. The first question is the board willing to let the person go back to work, which is kind of a yes or no. If that's a yes, then question number 2 is kind of under what criteria, which would be like length of contract. Generally, it's a minimum of 5 years. If there are some extenuating circumstances, oftentimes it could be a 10-year contract or an indefinite or quote unquote lifetime contract. Most of the time there is a probation period. We've always had that first 5 years has probation. It doesn't restrict their license. It's just an additional status on them. And generally the board wants to see like 20 hours of some sort of community service a year for 5 years as part of their reentry back into pharmacy. That extends their support group contract to coincide with the 5 years. It's seen as 5 years of active work. So if they don't work in pharmacy, it doesn't chip away at that 5-year kind of time frame. So I'll pass it back to Dr. Jolly because you've got 2 questions to ask them basically.
Yeah. So thoughts? questions? Are we comfortable? Giving him an opportunity to return back to work part-time.
I am.
Maybe we should ask, were there any other, not specific issues, but did anything lead to this?
It was the two DWIs tripped our wire on this one, that we had two alcohol related incidents that we asked him to, because after the first one, we basically tell you, this is your warning, you get another, we're going to ask you to give up your permit and go get an eval and follow those suggestions. So when he did exactly that, and then when he got, his medical paperwork, they said, he's not able to practice safely at this time. He needs treatment, inpatient treatment, and he has followed all that to a T for us. So there was no diversion, no reported impairment at work, nothing dealing specifically with the practice of pharmacy other than the outside, impairment.
And we would feel comfortable knowing that the entity he went to helped him figure out why that might have occurred and what he could do to help himself.
I think so. He's got advocacy from the support group for return, which is our biggest step. It's what we generally tell people is, we are looking in this approach that you follow what the medical experts say, and then you go to the support group and you show them that you have had, appreciable change, that they are trusting you to potentially get back into the profession.
Yeah, and we've got a three-pronged sort. I mean, here we've got the support group, we've got his treatment center, and then we've got an outside therapist that he sees regularly. So we've also got a letter from that therapist. He's got three people or three entities basically supporting him.
Yeah.
So I don't have a vote, but he appears to be in a compliant state of rehabilitation at this point. He's had 26 tests, no missed check-in, 26 negative results, multiple folks that are willing to advocate for him. Are there additional questions or comments, or are we ready to entertain a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that Dr. Brent Roberts be allowed to go back to work at no more than 32 hours per week.
32 or 20?
I think we're at 20
It's
right now.
20. Excuse me, I looked down too far. It is 20. I amended to 20.
Okay.
So that's generally question one of yes or no back to work. So that would answer that.
Okay. And what's question two?
Question two is the conditions of the contract, and you can include it in a single motion or say, I mean, if you want it to just be the usual 5-year contract, you can let us know that as part of the motion, and it takes care of both questions.
And the 5 years would start basically from when he starts practicing again as a pharmacist.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing it in 2 parts. That's okay. I can also say that we go ahead and put together the 5-year contract for it.
Okay.
And look like everything is falling from year to date. This all happened with him on 10/10/2022. Today is 10/10/23. So out for a year and get back to work. And it's a great thing. We go over the motion and then we can talk later.
So did you have a clarification?
What about the community service?
That's part
That
of
would
it.
be part of the typical 5-year contract.
So we don't have to specify it.
No.
Okay, so Dr. Newsom has a motion on the floor to allow Dr. Roberts to return to practice at 20 hours a week, and that he will be under the standard, I don't know if standard's the right word, but our 5-year contract with the support group. We have a second. We have a second by Dr. Mack. We're ready to take a vote. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
So Dr. Roberts, what we'll do is we'll have Ms. Bales will get it's known as a probationary consent order that will transfer you back to the authority to practice pharmacy. And we will get that to you here in the next few days.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Kirtley and the board. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Mr. James, anything else you have for us?
No, nothing at this time. Thank
That's a
you
good
so much
thing.
for seeing us today.
Absolutely. Sure appreciate the work you do there as executive secretary as well. So glad to have you.
Well, I appreciate all that y'all do, and y'all be safe, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks, sir.
Take care.
All right. Next up,
Ready for outcomes?
come on up. Yeah. If you want to, there's a push button. If you push it hard and release it, it'll turn green, which means go. And if you'll introduce yourself, because you don't look like Bruce.
Bruce is my last name.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. So hello, everyone. I'm Megan Bruce. I'm with Outcomes. I'm a licensed pharmacist with them. And first, I would like to thank the board for allowing me to speak to you today. I'm going to be talking about technology assisted final verification. And this is really meant to be an informational presentation on an emerging workflow that we hope to be able to offer some of our pharmacies in Arkansas. I did give out or sent over the presentation material. I'm assuming that everyone has that. Perfect.
We've got it on our little tablets here.
Perfect. You guys are so fancy. Love it. Okay, so what is technology assisted final verification? Technology assisted final verification is the process in which final verification occurs using photographic images of the final prescription product in the fill process. It takes place in lieu of the physical handling of the prescription to allow for a more streamlined process and more accurate audit trail versus the traditional fill process. And the way it works that you can see on slide 3 is my little diagram of our normal workflow. It kind of updates that. So the prescription will be entered into the pharmacy prescription management system as it would normally. However, once it reaches the fill process, the pharmacy staff will capture images of the entirety of that fill process. These images would then be uploaded virtually into the cloud, where the pharmacist would use those images to verify the prescription has been filled correctly. Once the pharmacist has verified the prescription, the patient would be counseled and checked out as dictated by state laws. So the next step, this is just kind of a breakdown of what that complete process kind of looks like. So in step 1, prescription images are captured by the technician, but again, that can be any pharmacy staff. They usually would take pictures of the hard copy, the prescription label, stock bottle that will include lot and expiration, product and count, and also the final product with the label attached. But what I also want to note here is that the pharmacist can request as many images as they would like, depending on what technology is being used. And so if the pharmacist needs more images to feel comfortable to check that particular prescription, they can request those additional images. So there can be up to an unlimited amount of images that can be sent to the pharmacist or requested by the pharmacist. So in the second step, the prescription is reviewed and approved by the pharmacist. So the pharmacist would go into a queue where the patient data is organized and prioritized. And the pharmacist will review images and prescription data and can reject or approve the prescription based on the information provided. And then finally, that prescription would enter back into what we consider the normal workflow that we're all kind of used to. And that's where the technician would meet the patient with the prescription at the point of sale. But the pharmacist would counsel that patient as appropriate. And the technician is actually unable to ring up that prescription unless the final check has actually occurred. So if the pharmacist hasn't done the final check on that prescription, the patient or the technician would be unable to actually ring up the patient. So this is all designed to kind of help improve the pharmacy workflow by maximizing efficiency in a manner that is safe and accurate so that pharmacists can safely focus on things such as clinical services, which directly benefits patients through improved adherence and outcomes. By utilizing technology assisted final verification, we can reduce the amount of clutter on pharmacy counter space. I know when I was working behind a counter, when I had a workspace that was really cluttered, that's when I would see that my technicians would be sending more errors towards me. So actually reducing that clutter and technology assisted final verification can actually help to prevent some of those errors, which obviously impacts patient safety. Also, technology assisted final verification can be used in two ways. I've been kind of discussing it in a way where it's kind of used on a single store, but there is another model where it can be shared amongst other stores in a load balancing sort of scenario. And in this scenario, prescriptions are routed to the first available pharmacist for them to check, or neatly organized in a shared queue for when a pharmacist is free to check. And that in that particular case, it's kind of really dependent on state laws. But all in all, this is designed to maximize staff efficiency while reducing the workload stressors and enhancing safety and accuracy of the fill process with a detailed audit log. And as I mentioned before, this is more so just the informational presentation, as this is something that we hope to be able to offer pharmacies in Arkansas. But before doing so, we of course like to do our due diligence. So we just wanted to see if the board had any questions or any regulatory considerations that we should take into consideration, or any questions for us regarding this whole process. And so with that, I'll take questions if there are any, or comments or commentary.
I love that you just powered through that. And I think that some of us were trying to keep up with you.
Oh, I am so sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I was able to see your slides enough to know which one I was supposed to be on here. I think there are initial couple of questions that we've been through when we've done like other workload balancing issues. And the first one is, when you talk about the step 3 verification, where are you guys envisioning that happening? Because we have some very specific rules and policies in Arkansas where you can only do workload balancing between licensed pharmacies within the borders of Arkansas.
Right. So this is just going to be for pharmacies within Arkansas. So there's two scenarios that we can talk about. If you're not talking about a load balancing situation, is that verification happens with that pharmacist that's on site of that one pharmacy where the prescription process is occurring.
And I'll interrupt for just a second to say, we have dealt with a similar situation to that with, and some of you may remember, with compounding in a hospital facility, where you don't want all the bodies there around the hood watching directly. And so we had some allowance and measures to where the photographic system was there instead of having to have an extra person in that controlled airspace. So we've dealt with that where there's been some visual verification within the actual facility where the pharmacist was in an adjacent space. So that is somewhat helpful.
And then in the load balancing scenario, that would be between two licensed pharmacies, ideally, and this would come to, I guess, where regulations would come in for the state law. Ideally, it would be between two pharmacies of the same ownership, or maybe have a shared service agreement. And then they can do that shared final check together.
We've had some of that with workload balancing, offsite order verification. And I know a key question the board had previously on that. It's one more slightly different step in that workload balancing scenario. Would that step 3, when they're verifying, how does it work when there's something that doesn't work? How do they have the ability to kick that back?
So what would happen is usually, and this also would be kind of dictated on that PMS system and the individual technology of the pharmacy. So I can't really like speak to like, what, Tom Joe's pharmacy would do on that kind of stuff. But what I can tell you is that if that pharmacist at a different store verifies it and says that there's an error with this, it gets kicked back and that prescription is virtually quarantined, and the technician will be unable to sell it until that prescription is fixed and returned back to that fill process and corrected.
It basically quarantines it within the store where it has to have a physical edit or fix to it for it to proceed, to then be released.
Correct.
Okay.
Sometimes that can be not just because it's wrong, but the pictures sometimes from Mari, has been my experience in my practice. You don't always get great quality pictures and you have to redo them.
Exactly.
Is there any barcode scanning at any step in this process besides point of sale? Sounds like there is some type of scan at point of sale.
Sure,
What about?
yes. Most people with this kind of technology, and like I said, I can't speak to everybody's, but we'll have some sort of barcode scanning to ensure accuracy. And that kind of is one of the main ways that we ensure accuracy in this kind of workflow.
But the barcode scanning is not like a part of your software. You're saying they could integrate it with their.
They're
existing-
piggybacking on a pharmacy's current software to add this as a connective tool. So to me, please correct me where I misspeak, Ms. Bruce, but it's, if I have Pioneer, you basically help to integrate Pioneer where this is one of the delineated steps of a virtual verification. That pharmacy system has to have both scanning capability for the prescription as well as photographic evidence of the final product for that verification.
Yes, so our product, and I want to speak a little globally about the whole technology, but if specifically what we offer, our product does integrate with a PMS system for a more seamless, for kind of like a seamless interaction where you don't even really know that you're stepping outside of that PMS system. And you'll be able to do that barcode scanning to ensure the accuracy that the drug matches the label or the leaflet that's printed out, whichever way that you're filling that prescription.
Is this product on the market now?
Excuse me?
It's on the market. You're on the market.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
an offering that we have now. Mhm.
So the pharmacist does not see the prescription until it is completely finished, correct? Like when you're talking about the opportunity to kick it back, that doesn't happen until they've already filled it completely.
So yes, the prescription would be bagged and then by the technician completely and then virtually quarantined. And then the pharmacist would see that prescription within a virtual queue, be able to pull up all the images of that fill process and then verify whether or not it was done so correctly.
And then you said that usually these are the images that are gathered. Is there like a bare minimum of the image?
There is actually, for at least for ours, but with this technology, there can be up to an unlimited amount of images that the
But these have to be on there. Is that correct?
So that's going to be dictated by that pharmacy's policies and procedures for this process. But that is what we recommend at the bare minimum is to have those.
And I wanted to clarify, and I think that my knowledge is, of course, from the places where I had worked. Some places have scan, input, verification of input, and then preparation of product, verification of final product, whereas other places scan, input, prepare product, and check it all at once at the end.
Mhm.
I imagine that your system can do either one of those iterations because if I do I call it 4-point, this way that I was kind of raised in pharmacy. If I do scan, input, and 4-point, then it can be filled and it delineates that at that point, the final verification is really its correct product per the prescription versus if I want to scan, input, fill, and then do verification, it's the 4-point and the actual product.
Correct. So yeah, there's different ways, like you said, that process kind of happens. And our system is able to work with however your PMS system works.
So I thinking back, and a couple of you may remember this, we had, several years ago, I don't know if you remember, we had a project where Walgreens had the pharmacist separated at the front, and most of what we allowed in kind of that pilot program was that they were doing video verification instead of being back behind the counter, so they could video verify and be out front for patients to try to do an additional touch point on that. Remember, it didn't really take off here. I actually went and one of the facilities that was using that was in downtown Chicago. I was there for a different pharmacy meeting and actually went and visited with the pharmacist and was able to look at that workflow there. In that instance, it was all contained within that single pharmacy. I think the different thing with this request would be the ability, if Outcomes was to hopefully offer this from their standpoint in Arkansas, to say that visual verification of the final product could be done at distance as long as it was from another licensed pharmacy within the board. So that's really the key to the request today that would be different than what the board had seen before.
Every bit of this is video and the pharmacist doesn't never really physically see the actual tablets and bottle and label. It's all on this
Yes, it's all photographic images, but it's also important to know that if the pharmacist is uncomfortable for a certain prescription to go through that process, they can always have it go through the normal process. Like if there's a certain type of medication, you're like, I just really want to physically touch this medication, then you can have that go towards your normal process. It's not like an all or nothing. You can dictate, the pharmacist has the ability to dictate what's going through that process and what's not.
And what's the benefit of this? Is it supposed to be faster or?
Yeah, so it's a more streamlined process. Not only that is you have a detailed audit log, which can actually help to improve your quality improvement, continuously quality improvement matrix as well. And so that kind of just clears up and allows the opportunity for the pharmacist to be able to do more outside that fill process, whether that's clinical services or any other thing along that line. It kind of helps provide that time and opportunity, whereas they don't have that because of the such time-consuming physical handling of the medication.
This is a little bit different than some issues that staff has had to work through that we did not agree with. Whereas, sometimes we see requests, it's, well, if we check it before it goes in a robot, then we know it's fine when it comes out the backside. And what this board has previously said repeatedly is there has to be a check of the final product. And, looking at Ms. Bruce's files, I mean, she's saying you have to have a picture of the hard copy, a picture of the prescription label itself that's on the bottle, the stock bottle where you can see that it is the right drug, the lot and expiration, the product and count, which I think is going to be a picture of the pills itself. So you could actually see that, yes, that's the pill in it. And then the final product all enclosed. So it's not just here's a label and here's a picture of a bottle. It's being able to tell what's in the bottle and how much. So it's a little bit higher level than what I think some people have said, but it is saying it is a true check of the final product, even if it's in picture form rather than physical form.
If I could use your comments as a segue, let me go to slide 4 where it talks about step 1. So the hard copy, this is a scanned image of the actual prescription itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Now the prescription label, is this an image of a computer generated? This is what the label would be, or is it a literal picture of the bottle with the label on it?
It's the literal picture of the bottle with the label on it. So it's your final, what the patient is getting labeled.
Okay.
So you'll get a picture of that label.
All right, so the stock bottle, is this a barcode scanned image of a stock image of this is the bottle selected? Or is this a picture of the stock bottle with the lot and expiration date on the side that you
Yes.
can see?
It's a picture of the stock bottle that the technician is actually using.
All right, now the product in count,
Mhm.
where does it take this image and what do I see?
So usually what you would see is that on the technician will have the pills laid out on a tray. And they will take a picture of those pills on the tray. And you can zoom in where you can see the indentations and the markings of the pills. And then you can also see the count of the pills. So for example, if a patient comes back and say, hey, I got 31 pills instead of 32. I don't know why 31, 32, those are random numbers, but you could go back and actually physically count exactly how many that patient actually got. So you'll get that count as well.
And
I wanna
Dr.
come back.
If they had an icon as part of their thing, it takes that picture as well and files it. So if you've ever seen it, an icon is a digital counting tray that you pour it out and it can actually identify the pill and snaps a picture of the prepared thing. So we've seen some of that technology.
Okay, so I want to come back to that. So, but go to number 5, final product with label. What am I seeing here?
So that's when the technician has put let's say the pills into the bottle, close the lid. You get a picture of that final product with the label on it. So that's what the patient will be getting. You see
So-
exactly what that is.
So if it's a box, I could see the product labeling on it. If it's a vial, I'm not really seeing the contents, right?
Right, but you've already seen the contents already laid out on the,
Okay, and
yeah,
I want
but you could take, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you could take or request that the technician take another picture of that bottle with the pills inside of the bottle if you wanted to.
Well, and I want to go back now to number 4, because if I'm not seeing the product that's in an amber vial in step 5, Just because that's what's counted doesn't mean it made it into that bottle with that label, and I can't see that that in fact has happened. So in fact, I am not checking the final product because the tablets could be counted, but end up putting it in a different bottle. And then what I'm hearing is the pharmacist is not going to be involved in the bagging process. So how do I know that there's not a bagging error that's occurred that would compound that? So you've got a picture of the stock bottle that you intend, that you've taken it from, but you don't know that between step 4 and step 5, that product that a picture was taken of makes it into the bottle it's supposed to make it into. And the pharmacist is not involved at the bagging process, so they can't see then to make sure either. What I want to know is that I can take the cap off the bottle, look in and say, yep, that's Coumadin 5. And I don't see that happening here.
So this is also where your policies and procedures can come in when it comes to the bagging, where you are only bagging one prescription at a time. You're not putting multiple prescriptions in the bag. That can be something part of your policies and procedures. However, it's also important to note that camera systems are able to be angled in such a way where you can capture a picture of that label, take off the lid, so you have your labeled vial, and be able to still see the pills that are inside to confirm that you have both of those. So you are still able to get that image capture if you want to. And again, the pharmacist still always has discretion where they have concerns or issues with that. They don't have to let that product go through the process.
And that's the exact point that the board has made previously and you're exactly right. Like if I look at number 5, final product with label, you have to be able to tell that those are the pills in the vial for the label. Like that's the cutoff the board has had previously. So you'd have to outline in policy that's not just a picture of a vial. You have to be able to see what's in the vial is what I think the
Also
board.
seeing what's.
Yes. All of what's in the vial. Yeah.
But if we approve it, it has to have that piece in it, or we can't really approve it. Because somebody else could decide not to use that policy.
Well, and that's the point, Ms. Bruce is basically saying this is a kind of a preparatory presentation to see if they would be able to offer it. And I think that the guidance from the board would be, if you think this is a good idea, but want to clarify number 5, like we would only consider it if number 5, the final product with label includes where you can see that it is the right pills with the right label in that final vial. Because that's why the board has previously said a pharmacist must do a final check in case of exactly what, Dr. Richmond outlined. Now the bagging process, the pharmacists are generally not in the middle of it anyway, once they pass that over.
Well, but my point is if you're not going to see the final bottle with the products in it, you got to have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And the next step, which is obvious, is not allowing that to happen either.
You're right.
What I'm hearing is a bunch of ifs. If we did this, or if we did this, or if this was done, or if the policy was edited. I'm not saying it's a bad process. I mean, frankly, we could say, okay, I want you to rely entirely on a manual process like we did 40 years ago. And anything that you do that enhances that, okay, fine. So the question I would have as a board is, are we saying that this process can be used and relied upon to produce final product? Or is it simply something that could be augmented, in which case it ultimately, the responsibility falls to the pharmacist, whatever it is that they do. If we're going to allow this to be the process that is endorsed, well, maybe not endorsed, but at least accepted by the board to say this produces final product, but yet it produces errors, then we're not doing what our responsibility is to protect the public.
I agree. I think that's why if the board was going to entertain using it, you would want to say it must have that clarification in step 5 for a true final prepared product verification.
Well, and I would also want to hear that there is a minimum set of steps and things that must be done, images, and not just this is what we recommend, but that in order for it to be able to be implemented, that here are the minimum steps. Now you can add more, but here are the minimum steps.
And the other thing that the board has previously said on any technology use like this is you have to be able, the process has to be one where you can delineate where every step happened so that if there is an error, you can go back and identify which step it happened in and therefore, where the responsibility lies for it. So, I mean, there's more than two, but the two direct scenarios are, do you do 4-point before you fill the prescription and prepare it, or after? Because those are major issues, because the final verification, there's a verification of the input and there's a verification of the output of the actual preparation of the prescription. So it could be separate, which we would expect to see it delineated of who did each step of the 4-point verification, and the final verification could be the same person, could be different people. Or if it's together, that all falls on one person. But I agree. What you're asking is, if it's an accepted process, you would want to set, here is the policy for the minimum acceptable process. And if you want to have 10 more pictures or 3 more steps or something else, that's fine. But at minimum, and I think this part of it, you have to have a copy of the hard copy. You have to be able to see the final prescription label. You have to have the stock bottle where you can see the lot and expiration. You have to have the ability to see that it is the right product and count. And you have to be able to see that that label and that product are in the container together, which could be one thing or could be separate.
Are there extra measures in place for controls?
So some pharmacies may have in their policies and procedures where controls don't go under this process, which is, that's their prerogative. And, I don't see any problems with that. So that, again, depends on what that pharmacy's policies and procedures.
I'm a little concerned too about they won't be able to check it out, because we also think there's fail-safe things that you can't get the prescription without being counseled, but it happens all the time. And then they can give it to them free without ringing it up. So, it's already filled and ready and no pharmacist has reviewed it and it's sitting there for the taking. Is that very safe?
We've seen that previously with years ago, there was a company that would routinely fill medications or refill medications that did not have an active refill at that time and quarantine it until they got the refill approved. Which I thought that was a fraudulent billing of insurance if you didn't have a valid prescription at that time, but my understanding is that no longer happens.
Dr. McCready, you got a question?
I have a question. Are you using this system elsewhere? And if you are, what has outcomes done as far as any sort of quality studies to show what your error rates are in this system?
Yeah.
And
So
can you provide that to us?
Yeah, so technology assisted final verification is actually a component of telepharmacy, which is approved in 28 states today in the United States. There's a very famous telepharmacy study that has shown that the error rates for telepharmacies were slightly low, but very close to that of the error rates that you see in traditional pharmacies nationwide. So that is one of the ways that, that you can see that process is safe. As far as an individual study that we've done just on this from being used at a traditional pharmacy, that's not information that that I have that I could share.
So how many states have implemented this?
So there are several states that have allowed technology assisted final verification that has actually addressed it within their regulations. Idaho is one, Missouri is another. I believe Kentucky may be looking at actually putting those into regulations, but for the most part, most states don't say how final check of the prescription can be done. So it's kind of leaves the door open for technology assisted final verification, but kind of doesn't at the same time. So, but there are some states, and it's starting to happen where more states are actually looking to put that into their regulations.
Could I go back to your response to Dr. McCready?
Yes, sir.
You said that in terms of having data from studies, that it's not information that you have that you could share. So the question I have, is it not information that you have, or is it not information that you have that you can share?
No, it's not information that we have. We haven't conducted a study. Because you have to also understand that since we are a vendor, we don't have access to individual pharmacies' information unless they decide to give that to us. So that is really one of those roadblocks that if we wanted to even do one of those studies like that, where it would be very difficult for us to do because pharmacies don't have to give us or, provide those sort of error rates to us.
Well, I would encourage, and really frankly, this would be regarding any technology that would be aimed at reducing medication errors or improving processes, is that through an IRB proposal, you could put together a study, it could be HIPAA compliant where information is redacted, but you could do that study.
I have just a basic question. The heading of your chart says final verification. To me, when something says final verification, that implies there's been a preceding verification. And I don't see any preceding verification here.
So again, this is going to be how the particular pharmacy verifies their prescriptions. For example, a lot of pharmacies will do, as Dr. Kirtley has mentioned, will do that initial check of that prescription, verifying that it was inputted correctly before it goes into the fill process. And so all that happens prior to that final verification. So this is just that final check of the product.
It would be clearer if it said, to your point, because some places do it differently, it is a final product verification might be a better term. It could be final product or entire final process, but it's the last verification that could be an all-in-one verification or one of the many parts.
So are we as a board okay with there being only one time that a licensed pharmacist has active input into the prescription, whether filling it, verifying it, or whatever? We're okay with just one time for them to be involved with it, a pharmacist?
What the board has generally said is most parts of the prescription filling process can be done by support staff under supervision of the pharmacist, but only a pharmacist can do the final verifications of the individual parts that may be done by support staff. So only a pharmacist should be doing the verification of the prescription being input correctly. And only a pharmacist should be going over whatever DUR drug utilization flags there are. And only a pharmacist can do the product final verification that you have the right product with the right label, with the right directions and everything.
So basically using her steps, you could have a machine theoretically do all of the steps up to step 5. And assuming that you could look in the sack and open the pill bottle and so forth, that would be okay to have that be the one and only time the licensed pharmacist touched it.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
This may be counterintuitive, and I know that the error is human, that we can use technology to improve our processes. We've absolutely shown that helps. But to put technology at the end of the process and to take the pharmacist out of that final verification of some form, I can't support. I'm all in assisting the process, but I don't know that I could substitute a system for a pharmacist.
You want a physical final verification rather than a virtual final verification would be your point.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a way that in Arkansas it could be that, because like from a liability standpoint, it seems really great to have this documentation if someone calls and does say like, hey, you told me, I'm supposed to have 60, I only got 30, whatever. Is there a way for it to be allowed, but to still also have that final physical check? In other words, like you can use the system because it documents things. So it wouldn't necessarily be to slow everything down, but then just to add the final physical check.
I think that's what Dr. Richmond's point is, that in the current system, there is basically a required final physical visual verification. I think what his point is, and correct me where I misspeak, Rodney, is he's saying this is a great augment to that, but in his mindset, he's not prepared to replace that final physical verification, no matter how good this virtual part is. So I think you're seeing it as an augment rather than a replacement.
I think the other issue is, while the system may be great and streamlined, it all depends on the pharmacy that's buying it, if you will, or if they don't, she's not going to be responsible. Her company is not going to be responsible that the pharmacist knows all those rules and puts everything into place and follows every state law. I just feel like it's a small augmented word piece of system that may help somewhere. But is somebody going to buy it and think they've already figured out all these rules and I'm good to run it just like this? That's a little worrisome.
I think though, to go back, Dr. Richmond's point is really the barometer of which way the board would go in a final decision on that, because she's just presenting it today. There's not a specific request, but I think for the board, that's the real question. Are you comfortable replacing what you've had as a requirement for a final physical verification with a virtual verification with this technology? Or are you only comfortable with using this as an adjunctive increase in oversight, an augmented thing? So that's the real question is, can you switch final physical verification with final virtual verification with this technology? And if that answer is yes, then it replaces it. If the answer is no, then this technology could be put in use in Arkansas through, offsite order entry or on-site to augment it, but you're still asking for the final verification, which the physical final verification is truly product, label, and bottle, not input. That is generally a virtual process currently, the 4-point check at this point for most pharmacies, because they scan it and they verify that part in the computer before it ever prints a label. When I was in school or early in practice, we didn't have that technology. So that was a physical verification because I had a physical prescription and a physical label that I would check those before we ever filled the prescription. But that's generally virtual now.
Seems to me like there might be a lot of, and you hate to use the word pharmacist fatigue, but if you've got them verifying and verifying and verifying, and that's all they're doing, just how many steps may get missed as you go through that? And that may not, and that's part of the quality questions that I have is how much pharmacist fatigue is there? What are you seeing as far as errors coming back? And I think that's really important.
Is this pretty similar to what's in mail order as far as, do they physically, I don't know that we have any specifically only in Arkansas, but do they specifically look at the final product or that
They're
they
supposed to.
use this?
We would say they are required to under Arkansas rules.
The mail order places. I've been as a final.
There's been a final
physical-
pharmacist station.
there looking at the product.
Dr. Matt, we've had issues with a couple of central fill locations that we became aware did not do a final physical verification, different than what she is presenting.
Right.
But it was the concept of if the pharmacist verifies what pills are going into the robot quote doesn't make mistakes, and that's a final verification, which we said, no, that is not. That is not acceptable. You can either add in a final pharmacist verification or you can stop shipping those products in the state. And thus far, they've said, well, then we're not going to, some companies have said, we're not going to change that workflow, so we're not shipping to the state. We had another company, they have a different procedure. And for Arkansas, they do send it down the line. The pharmacist does a final physical visual verification.
Well, and I'll preface this by saying I'm not a shareholder or employee of Walmart. But you refer to a 4-point check, which I think that's kind of Walmart lingo.
Along those lines.
And their process seems intuitive. That you input the prescription, you prepare the label, decide what drug, make sure all the bean counting parts are put together, and you do the DUR. So you have qualitatively input the prescription, made sure that it's being properly labeled, made the decision through clinical issues that is this drug to be used? And if so, this is ultimately, and it goes through that 4-point process that they refer to, whatever system, but at that point, you've quality assured the information and considerations that go into, is this product appropriate? And here's how it's going to be labeled. Then it goes on to the filling process where now you're not having to go back and recheck. And I'm okay with the virtual part of that. But now you go to the end, and now you have the final product. So now is it properly labeled? Did I put the right product in the bottle? And I still don't feel that there's any computer substitute for being able to see that this is the right bottle or right product in the bottle or being labeled or whatever. And that it also serves as that opportunity, that coupled with our requirement for patient counseling, that it requires those, or it allows those two opportunities for the pharmacist to make sure that, okay, I'm about to give this to the patient. Yes, this is the right drug. It has been, you know, whether it should be used or not, clinical consideration has gone through the DUR. That's been done. Yeah, this is the right product, and I'm counseling the patient, and I still get that one last chance.
Lots of errors are caught at that step.
Yes. And so that system, and again, I'm not advocating for Walmart system.
Yeah.
It's just that process where you quality assure what's going into it and you check that part. And then you move on to the product part and then you check that. That just seems to parse out things.
I mean, that's what we did in the Independence where I work. It was a two-part, not a one-part. It's a whole lot easier to fix something in the process before it's in a bottle with a label on it for me.
Yeah.
You know, in thinking than it was to have to go back and fix it once it's already been counted and everything else. You have to start reversing the process and taking risk of putting the product back in the wrong container or mixing lots or anything else.
When would you catch that error?
When or if?
Well, when
I mean, it's
two products in one bottle
yeah,
is very hard to catch.
it is.
From a picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of work for technicians. I'm wondering if they would find their own workaround, eventually just hire them to do so many extra little pictures at every turn. Batch filling coming in.
Mhm. So this is mainly informational purposes right now. I don't know that she's really asking the board to take any action. I think that she can kind of hear and go back and watch the discussion of the board. I can tell you that my gut feeling is that right now that the board is not going to go away from requiring a final physical verification, but that this could be an adjunctive process and, you know, that might help you get some data or other things for future discussions as well. Did I miss anything on that for board members?
No.
I think at that point, you probably accept it for informational purposes and that's kind of it.
So no motion required.
Thank you guys for your time.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Dr.
coming
Lewis.
in.
Appreciate you
You're
coming.
welcome to stick around and watch some more entertainment here at the
Oh.
meeting.
Thank you.
All right. I think you've got 145. don't you?
Okay,
You talked to them and you were on phone.
For 140, we had transfer MyRx.
afternoon.
You guys want to, that one's on green. We'll get the other one on green. If you want to
Okay.
introduce yourselves and when you press that button, I believe it'll pop up on screen or our IT guru is here to help with that.
Yeah, I'm Mike Sands, and this is my partner, Bill Hollick. We're co-founders of TransformRx. And we are actually, Nabil and I are owners and operators of independent specialty pharmacies in Texas. I've talked to you before, Dr. Kirtley, about compounds. So it's nice to meet you all. And we appreciate your time. So we're here to discuss with you, to get your guidance and to get your opinion about our transfer prescription platform that we've developed. I can give you the story of how it started. It was actually Nabil's idea. Nabil's a 31-year pharmacist. Nabil had a conversation with someone from the State Board of Arkansas back in May, and they told him that, because this is a prescription transfer platform, it enables you to transfer prescriptions to an unaffiliated pharmacy. Unaffiliated meaning a pharmacy with a different PMS system. And that individual told him, well, no, it needs to be done by phone or fax, correct? But your law says that it can be also done by other electronic means to communicate the information for transfers. So I can give you kind of the basics of the system, and then maybe we can discuss it. You can ask us some questions, and then we'll conclude. But so the system, it was developed to as a solution to one of the most tedious tasks that pharmacists have to do every day, which is transferring in and out of their pharmacy. And it's a HIPAA compliant system. We were audited by the Drummond Group. It is patent pending, and we developed it starting about 2 years ago. We just launched it a few months back at the McKesson Idea Share, so it's relatively new to the market. But Nabil, this was his idea, and it came about by we do a lot of fertility medications, and we had a patient. We had a big kind of a disaster with the transfer. As you may know, fertility medications are time sensitive, and it's this lady was going through an IVF procedure, and her medication was mistakenly sent to a chain pharmacy in Frisco, Texas, and they didn't specialize in fertility, and so it took them a day and a half to transfer her medication. And with these types of things, she could have lost her pregnancy. So she was exasperated. Nabil was on the phone with them forever, several times, and she finally just drove her car up into the drive-through and turned it off, took the keys out, and walked into the pharmacy and said, I'm not going to move my car until you guys transfer my prescription. So that's when Nabil that's an extreme example, but that's when he had the idea of, okay, there's got to be another way to do this. So we developed a system. It's a robust system. It's got all 88,000 pharmacies loaded into it. Has every drug NDC from all the Medispan data. It has all the prescribers. It's secure, and it saves a ton of time. The data we've seen, and it doesn't require any phone calls. So most transfers invariably require some kind of a phone call to verify the pharmacist on the other end. This does not. It's sent through fax and email through the portal. It's a standalone portal. And our goal is to eventually, which we're started now, is to integrate with the other PMS systems, the major ones, and as many as we can. We started doing that with a few of them recently. And so everything's time stamped. It's saved for 10 years. It reduces errors. And we have seen the data shows that the average transfer takes 6.5 minutes to complete now. That's excluding any type of phone call. If there's any phone call involved, the whole times can add 20, 30, 45 minutes. So it's 6.5 minutes. Our system without integration takes 1 or 2 minutes. And once we're integrated, that's mere seconds. So those are kind of the main points of it. One of the bigger things is the patients will soon be able to log in and initiate their own transfers from pharmacy A to pharmacy B. And if one pharmacy is not signed up with our system, they can still complete the transfer. They don't have to both be signed up. It's an easy sign up process, and the system's really easy to use. Nabil has it here if you guys want to see some of it. And I'm thinking that's the main, maybe we can talk about the DEA's new ruling. Our system meets all the criteria of their new ruling that they came out with at the end of July regarding electronic prescription controlled substances. So it complies with that. And I think unless there's anything else.
It complies with the forwarding rule that they tell us, like SureScripts doesn't have the capability yet.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. I mean, it's the best thing. Let me
So-
introduce myself.
Absolutely.
It's a two-way
Please do.
communication. Yeah. This is Bill. How you want to use it?
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
My name is Nabil Halak. I'm a practicing pharmacist for 31 years. Currently, well, for the last year, I kind of stepped away from the counter because of this. I had to learn a lot of technology terms, a lot of technology ideas. And, but I have practiced, last time I was in this room, actually 5 years ago when I took my Arkansas license. So it looks different today. It's transfer prescriptions happens every day, and it's a patient's right to decide where, unfortunately, it's not a patient's choice. It's usually quite often mandated by PBM or insurance or for any reason, specialty, hubs, you name it. And so the transfer exists part of our daily flow. And it has become, when I first practiced, it used to be always disruptive, but it used to be 5-10 minutes. I'll call you back. It used to be reasonable. Anymore, it's beyond reasonable, beyond. You try once, you try twice. And I'd like to mention something. I had the inspector from Texas Board of Pharmacy at my pharmacy about 6 months ago. And after she finished inspection, I sat with her to just talk because we're friends. And I told her about this. And we haven't launched yet. And she said, oh God, she said, I have missed a signature on from one of the chains without mentioning names. I have missed a signature on one of the forms, and I've been after them for 2 weeks trying to get hold of the chief pharmacist. This is what we live. So there has to be a better way of communicating and transfer of prescription. It cannot take a day or two anymore. Any pharmacy you walk in, there's 2 or 3 stickers that has a task of transferring prescription that has been pushed from yesterday to today and maybe till tomorrow, because you can only wait half an hour or 45 minutes for so long before you fall behind in your flow. So the TransferMyRx is a portal. However, it always kept the main requirement of the federal and state laws, which is communication. Communication, a prescription must be communicated. So I doubt I'll be practicing by then, but I hope that one day the federal and state law will change where it will become e-transfer, basically the way we have ERX today. We're not there yet. It will take a lot of starting with federal law changing, then state laws changing, and a lot of exactly what SureScript had to go through to create the e-script. Now, since we cannot get overnight to the e-transfer, which 2 computers talking to each other, fully integrated, you push the button, it jumps from one pharmacy to the other. We're not there. I doubt, as I said, I'll still be practicing by the time we get there. So we believe that TransferMyRx is the first step in the right direction. It's communication because it's a two-way traffic. And
That's the difference.
that's where we go back to saying that SureScript does not have the ability currently. Because I got involved in this, I stumbled over the new law back when it was still in the proposal. And I actually kept calling till I got hold of Mr. Scott Brinks, the guy from the DEA that was handling the docket. And he's the one that accepted the public comments. And I kept, as I said, sending emails and leaving voice messages, voicemails till he answered me. And he said, unfortunately, federal law does not allow me to comment on a law that is still in the proposal. So after a month of chasing him, that's the only answer I could get. But that kind of pushed me to dig deep into that and follow every month and to be honest, I was shocked that it got approved so fast. I was thinking that it would still take a couple of years to get there. It's a pleasant surprise because our system is a two-way communication. It's not a one-way messaging. Here's the issue with, no disrespect intended to SureScript. As a pharmacist practicing, I owe SureScript a lot of gratitude for what they've done. Otherwise, I'd be spending 4 hours taking prescriptions verbally over the phone today. But their problem is they are a one-way messaging system. One-way messaging system works perfect for electronic prescription because electronic prescription is only supposed to go one way. It's not supposed to go in 2 directions. And the only other function that works, which is refill request, because that also has to go in one direction. TransferRx that they tried to introduce back in 2018 failed using their technology. ChangeRx failed using their technology, and Cancer Request has failed. Why? Because it's a messaging system, one direction messaging system. So a cancer request comes and it lands somewhere else. It's not tied to that e-prescription. So you have to go search for it. Same thing, ChangeRx. ChangeRx moves in one direction. So it lands somewhere else in the software. So you have to go search for it. That's what we fixed with TransferMyRx. It basically two people communicating, but instead of doing it over the phone, they're doing it through this portal, this software. And
And reject.
yes, they have all the functions that a pharmacist needs to do. Both pharmacists on both sides, they have to lay eye on the screen and they will still have to put submit, accept, reject, comment. Nobody can pull anything from anybody without their knowing. Even when you push one out, trying to help your patient by pushing one out, it's the other one must accept it, otherwise you get the rejection. So as a pharmacist for 31 years, I believe it does not replace me, but it helps me do that task that I must do a few times a day without disrupting somebody else's flow or without being on hold for 45 minutes. As far as the new law, the DEA new law, we bring this up just hopefully when our Arkansas Board of Pharmacy decide to take this up. A lot of Board of Pharmacies, from what I understand, are not tackling this issue and not putting it on their agenda because they're under the impression that there is no system that can facilitate that. So there's no sense of entertaining that. DEA approved it, fine. They did not put details to it. We're not going to entertain that till there's a system and everybody's waiting for SureScript. Well, SureScript is not ready for it and they don't have a system for it and we do. So I bring this up, as I said, hopefully, and I'm open for any questions as far as the new law. But this is just, I'm bringing this up just to give like the information that there is a system out there in case the board decides to put it on the next meeting or the next two meetings agenda.
So I can probably help clarify because and we've talked about this some as staff, and I'll have a question too with it. You know, we've had people come to us before and talk about they wanted to be an intermediary where it's I pull the prescription from you, Nabil, and then I hold it and then I push it to you, but it's not you two actually communicating. It's me grabbing it and shopping it to see where I can send it, which would be a 2 transfer system, which wouldn't be allowed. And the way I would say this, if you're 1, I'm 2, and he's 3, I'm number 2 taking it from you and then handing it to him, which is I'm holding it, manipulating it. It's a 2 transfer process. And without, seeing it visually happen, it's a little bit hard for me to wrap my head around what it sounds to me like you're trying to do is you're saying it's a fax queue is the way I would say it. It's I send a fax, you send a fax to him and I'm the queue and I'm sitting there until he gets the chance to receive it.
The only thing we use fax for and emails is notification.
No, I was saying that's the example I would think about it the way that most people would process it is if the fax machine runs out of paper, it's just sitting there waiting for me to load the paper, for instance.
Yes.
Versus it's not that you fax it to me and then I print it off and refax it to somebody else.
With what TransformRx does is if it's a portal, standalone portal, the way it is today, it's basically exactly the way you're describing. Although we do not act as a third pharmacy. We are not a pharmacy. We're not a pharmacy software. Basically, that portal is used for those 2 people to log in and communicate the prescription. And now if it's integrated, now we're already in the process of integrating with Digital RX. And next month, we have on the calendar DRX. So once we're integrated, even then, nobody can pull anything from whatever. It has no access to the other pharmacy data, but they both have to do the pharmacist duty, which is check it out, look at it, decide whether they can send it, accept it, reject it, anything else that we do over the phone today. The form itself, if it's standalone, it's exactly what 2 pharmacists would tell each other over the phone. It pulls the pharmacy, pharmacist, and in controlled substances DEA number from the login of the pharmacy. We use for pharmacy, here's another issue. If we're gonna wait till the whole country gets integrated, that's gonna take 20 years. Most likely, most of us will be retired. So we had to make it if a pharmacy is integrated and the other pharmacy is not integrated, it will send that not integrated pharmacy notification. It will not send them a prescription. It will not give them any information. It will just tell them notification that you have a request. You have either a request from somebody to send a transfer in, or somebody is pushing one to you. It's in the portal, but you would have to log in to accept it or reject it.
John, we know the stores that have common ownership that they can transfer electronically.
Well, generally, they would have a shared database. So if they have a shared database, we don't even count it as a transfer. Most big corporate pharmacies, it's all in one, you hate to say the cloud, but it's all in one system. So whether it's my normal patient or someone who's visiting me, I'm pulling that of one centralized system.
And so that's why you say that if you have a group under common ownership of one database, you can transfer as many times as you want.
Absolutely.
That's the reason.
Yes, but it's not a transfer, it's a shared database issue.
Okay.
So
As far as controlled substances, of course, this is the difference, I guess, between transferring and forwarding. I mean, if you're transferring, it means it's been filled at least once.
yes, it's transferring a refill, and the DEA says pharmacist to pharmacist only. And we've been, I don't know anybody that's gotten the DEA to say it's okay to do that electronically. They are looking old school phone, basically. Not even fax, pharmacist to pharmacist, because it has, otherwise you don't know it's pharmacist to pharmacist.
So wasn't this thing that came out back in July, that was about forwarding, right?
That's about forwarding electronic prescriptions for controlled substances that had not been filled. And in all our discussions with NABP, we've basically been told it's a pipe dream because no one has the capability to do it. SureScripts is the main program that does it, but I very much agree. It is a very unidirectional movement that they're trying to develop this back and forth communication to reject scripts, to send them back, to, for prescribers to even be able to go back and cancel them. Like, well, I sent it to the wrong place, I'm going to cancel it before they can do anything with it, and get communication to verify, but it's not multi-directional.
Well, isn't the issue though with forwarding though, therefore it's original. So the digital signature that's required, that's the issue, right?
That's my understanding is with the EPCS requirements for encryption, decryption, and the basic source, the forwarding, I don't know yet how it's going to be able to show the original prescriber that it was technically forwarded, because once again, the main system we use doesn't go back and let them see that in their record. So them saying that DEA has approved it is odd to me, or I don't think they actually said they approved it.
No.
Yeah.
No. We reading the law and getting a legal opinion on it, we believe we meet all the requirements of the DEA. Now,
Okay.
as far as digital signature and electronic signature, and with all due respect, it's not really forwarding, because part of that new law says it must be communicated between two pharmacists and exchanging all the meeting all the requirements of the transfer. So basically, pharmacist names have to be exchanged, pharmacy information have to be exchanged, DEA number have to be exchanged, along with all the elements of the prescription. Now, the only tricky part in this whole new law is the digital signature, because digital signature comes with the electronic prescription embedded in it as an object. And it lands on the software. I use Pioneer in my pharmacy. So if I get a controlled substance that is digitally signed, it comes within the message, because the e-prescription, we see it as a prescription, like a whole, just like it's typed, but the way it's transferred between the EMR and the PMS, between the doctor and the pharmacy, it comes as a language we don't understand, which is a message. Within that message embedded is something called digital signature. Now, that digital signature comes with a key that all software companies that are allowed to accept controlled substance prescriptions, they have within it verification method that they take that key and that signature, which is a bunch of numbers and letters, and they verify it with the original. Now, transferring that, because the federal law also says that if you decide to transfer a prescription electronically, you have to transfer with it the digital signature if it came with the prescription. So the way we're doing it is you actually part of the transfer when you integrate, because without integration, this new law will not apply. Both pharmacies have to be integrated because it has to remain as electronic form. So basically, our software will call on where the prescription is, ask for all the information we need through an API. And along with that, it will ask for that with that message that came to that system, embedded in it, the digital signature. That is transferred securely to the other pharmacy, at the pharmacy software. It lands there and they have all the component of the transfer, including the pharmacist's name and the pharmacy information, DEA, along with the actual ERX message that came from the doctor, embedded in a digital signature.
Well, regardless, forwarding, it wouldn't be legal in Arkansas anyway.
Well, we do not have anything to prohibit forwarding under the DEA definition because we don't have anything prohibiting transfer of a controlled substance on hold. Like we allowed that until the DEA clarified that it wouldn't be allowed.
But they had to be filled once before they could be transferred.
That's the DEA rule. What our rule says, and it's the very last page of their thing, part A, and here are the salient parts of our rule. Transfer of original prescription information for a legend drug or controlled substance for the purpose of dispensing, not for refill, for dispensing, is permissible between pharmacies on a one-time basis only. However, pharmacies electronically sharing a real-time online database may transfer up to the maximum refills because we don't see as a transfer. So the whether it's on hold or has ever been filled is a DEA construct that in their Code of Federal Regulations, 21 CFR 1300, whatever, it says for the purposes of refill. So that's where, when they got a direct interpretation, they said you cannot transfer a controlled substance on hold. When it was a hard copy that came on hold, which at that point you go, I'll kill it out of my system, hand the person back the hard copy. That's the solution on a hard copy. But for electronic prescriptions, they're forever stuck. And I mean, we've had pharmacies that say, you know what, I'm going to fill one pill on it because it's a schedule 3, 4, or 5, and then I'll just transfer the 29 that are left. And then they go, and it doesn't matter if the patient never comes and pick it up. I don't know. You're really splitting hairs there. If they return it, then it was filled and then returned. I don't think you need to play that game. So DEA's tried to fix this with the new rule, but it's gotten real. I think they've made it much more difficult than it needed to be, quite frankly. Our rule does not have that. The other salient parts of ours is the transfers communicated directly between two licensed or registered individuals, or one of them must be a pharmacist. Transfer and records the following information and avoids that. And they've hit. I mean, I purposefully drafted this when we did, where Part E down below it, pharmacies transfer prescription may utilize facsimile or other electronic means to communicate information for transfer. I did that for 2 reasons. Number one, we know that there are other potential transfer versions, such as I could send you a picture, and we didn't say it could be Facebook Messenger, which you could argue is not HIPAA compliant, or an email system, which you have email systems that are HIPAA compliant, and we did not anticipate what else might come forth. The difficulty with transfer MyRx as we wrestle with this, and I can't say if it's right or wrong or good or bad, is that the whole 1, 2, 3. When you have a middle entity, it's very difficult to say, is this intermediary an intermediary that is touching or changing or holding it versus is it a non-contact intermediary, like we would say the fax machine itself is the intermediary that one sends it from a fax machine that goes through through the phone system to another one. Well, in this instance, it's this specific software that they're working on integration. I think integration into a computer system helps, if they can connect to, Computer RX at pharmacy A and Pioneer at pharmacy B, or the Walmart system at one and the Walgreens system at another. If they're integrated, I think it helps erase a whole lot of the third-party intermediary knowledge.
Throw one more log on the fire, and I may be a little off base on this one, but weren't there Arkansas laws that were passed? Basically, these were aimed at PBMs who were directing pharmacies to call and transfer prescriptions that patients didn't even know that were being transferred. And so would this prevent or would this allow, because if you can just log in and pull a prescription.
Well, correct me where I misspeak. With your system, if I'm trying to get a prescription, I could log in and request it.
Yes.
And the other pharmacy would be able to see the request. The law was originally had language about the transfer of a prescription being basically outlawed in the title, but it did not make it into the actual language of the rule. But there was language that a pharmacy, it's about home delivery, mainly mail orders, that some of the specific language, they cannot request a transfer of a prescription or like a new prescription without written consent from the patient. So the patient has to consent to it, no matter what process it is. If the patient hasn't consented to having their prescription information shared, then that's a potential case for us.
And that's why, sorry, and that's why on the new DEA, preparing for the new DEA law, at least in California, because California has already approved it. And now the state and federal law in California, Digital RX, the one that actually we're about to finish integrating with, is mostly in California. That's why he's so eager. One of the things other than putting ARX with a digital signature was patient consent. Most legal experts have said that although the law did not go to the extent that to say that you have to document the patient consent, but they went out of their way to say patient consent is a must in this new transfer of controlled substances. So what we did is we added one more step on a controlled substance that has not been filled before, that is being sent to another prescription. The system stops the pharmacist and make them attest that they have a patient consent.
Okay, Dr. Mack has a question, then Dr. McCready has a question.
Okay, so I think I understood this right, that those pharmacy A and pharmacy B, whether they're signed up or not, both of those have to log on the portal to do their job, either to ask for it or release it. So isn't that like what happens today? It may be on the phone, but it still takes the two parties at each place to do the work.
It is to an extent, but for me, when I'm practicing, if I can just go in and request and go back to my business, taking care of my patients, let them take half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, because now I'm trying twice within a period of 3 hours to get hold of them, and I'm still not getting hold of them. So if I get a response during that period and I'm still attending to my patient, I think I'm better off. Now, what we did, the ultimate goal was never a standalone portal, that a website you log in and you take care of business.
Want to be integrated.
But basically, we realized that you have to have a product before you can present it to both pharmacy, to a software company, to tell them, hey, integrate with me. You cannot promise them what you're going to do. You got to create a product, be able to present it, show it, how it works, and then ask for integration. So is this the ultimate goal of? No, it's the first step. We're hoping in the right direction.
My other part of that was if pharmacy A is signed up with you and pharmacy B isn't, how are you even getting anything to pharmacy B for them to even know that pharmacy A wants their transfer? You can't get in their system, so how are you getting to them?
We basically notify them. We notify that pharmacy. We have NCPDP data as far as faxes. When the other system is not integrated, which most of the case now, and they're not even signed up, they've never heard of us. They get a notification that you do have a request in something called TransferMyRx. It's very simple. It just tells them, hey, log in, sign up. Oh, I tell you what, if you don't want any of that, use this code to go in and log in as a guest. We already have his information. We're only missing his pharmacist name. Because that other pharmacy told us in our system, we have all pharmacies. Anybody that has NCPDP number is already in. Told us, I'm gonna get it from John's pharmacy. So we already have all that information except the pharmacist login. So at that point, we asked them to put their name and their license number just to pass it on to the other pharmacy. That's first. Second, in the fax, they get notified which pharmacy that is requesting a transfer. So they're more than welcome to call them. If they want to avoid us altogether, we have no problem with it. It's not about just this one using us, he's paying us, he's not paying us. It's not about that. It's about let's create a first step in the right direction to get to where we want to go. So we're giving all the tools to the other pharmacy. Please comply, fax it to him, talk to him, away from our system, pick up the phone, do something. But we do not pass any information until they log in the portal. And eventually when they have it on their system, it will be part of, not necessarily a button that says transfer my RX. We hope somebody will give us that. I doubt and they would. But at least it will be in the queue, the transfer queue in the system.
Sounds kind of like what an internal system will do, like John mentioned, from Walgreens to Walgreens or Walmart to Walmart.
Yeah, I think, part of the good news for, I think, my board members today is they're basically telling you they're giving this to you as information, not with a specific request today. And they're also telling us that one of the things they're working towards is integration. When we have dealt with these intermediary type systems in the past, what the board has generally said is get integrated, because when it's a separate process, if it's a separate process, then I have to go to a different system and then either transfer it manually or print it off and then re-input it or something like that. But if it's an integrated system, like when you get integrated with, the funny thing is Arkansas is, 50-50 independent chain. Well, you hit 2 or 3 of the major chains and then a couple of the major providers for the independent software that they use, and you get probably 80% of the state of Arkansas that is integrated or integratable at that point. And I think it changes the decision-making history that we've seen with our board when you have that integration. So, the couple of big targets, Computer RX has been a big one here. Pioneer has been a big one here. PharmaServe or whatever McKesson calls theirs traditionally has been a big one here.
Enterprise RX, yeah.
Yeah, those are the big ones that you see. So, I'd keep working towards that integration, and you probably want to get in front of some more boards of pharmacy, whether it's individually or at one of the regional meetings or something like that, to talk about, this new realm of transfers.
So you have a database of 88,000 pharmacies.
NCPDB.
And you keep that information. Do you know where they're licensed, what states they're licensed in? Do you know that all of these pharmacies across the country are licensed in the state of Arkansas, so it's legal for those pharmacies to ship into the state? How do you verify that?
Oh, well, we'll transfer a prescription platform, so we will not have anything to do with the dispensing of a prescription
But
now.
if the prescription goes to a pharmacy that's not legally able to ship in the state of Arkansas, then that prescription is now dead because it's been transferred and they can't transfer it again per Arkansas law. So how are you going to verify that it is going to a pharmacy that is legally able to ship to the state of Arkansas?
So now, no disrespect intended, but let's say I'm practicing in Little Rock today and I get a call for a transfer. I'm telling you, after 31 years, it would not cross my mind that I would ask, are you licensed here, not licensed here? As far as now, when I come to dispense something, of course, it's just that point when I got all the phones ringing, and I'm pretty sure most of I'm just being honest. At that point, I'm just trying to get the information, put it down. Now, when it comes to dispensing, that's a different story. When I put it in my system,
Facilitating the transfer to a pharmacy that can't legally ship.
But
now the patient is stuck.
But you would have to assume that means the patient is getting it in Arkansas, and the transfer portal should not necessarily know that. If I'm traveling with my spouse and we're in Florida, I need it transferred to a pharmacy that can get it Florida, not when they can ship to Arkansas.
If I decide I want to, I'm online and I see mail order XYZ, and they say that this drug is gonna cost this much money, so I call my pharmacy and I say, I want my drug transferred to that pharmacy. Nobody's verifying that that pharmacy's license can legally ship it to the
No.
state of Arkansas.
Not currently, no.
Till,
And it's gonna
till
be
you
their
come to
fault.
the dispensing.
Yeah, it's.
When it comes to the dispensing,
They
that's
can't
when you're
ship.
like, well, what are you doing?
Right.
Because the prescription's been transferred.
But in your example, the patient asked for it to be done.
Right.
So they stuck themselves.
But it seems to me that there should be some mechanism by which, I mean, we find pharmacies all the time for shipping in the state when they're not legally available to ship.
Yeah,
So
right.
it seems to me that we're creating a problem with that if we're sending these prescriptions to pharmacies that can't legally ship to the state.
But it's supposed to be based on a patient request.
It probably is.
And we have patients that request pharmacies that can't ship in routinely,
The ones-
but they shouldn't ship.
Shouldn't ship, that's the thing, yeah. But that's a great question, though. That's
And
another-
anymore with all the practice, I don't want to take much more time, but anymore with the practice. And I'm not speaking about any specific word of pharmacy, probably Texas tried even put, the only state that actually mandate that you have to finish a transfer within 4 hours is Texas. And yet when we met with them, I asked them, so when was it ever enforced? And they said never, because there's no way to tell. It's all he said, she said. So, yeah, definitely, maybe, as I said, please, no, I don't want anybody to take this with any disrespect, but maybe the lack of accountability is what got us to where we're at across the whole country. I'm not talking about specific state.
Patients are completely in the dark. I mean, when it comes to, we all know
Yeah,
that. It took my mother last month, 2 days to get her prescriptions transferred from North Carolina to Florida. So, yeah.
I think what we find more often is that we don't require a transfer to happen. And so you've got people that have been waiting months for a transfer. And I, as a pharmacist, I've had times that I was happy to transfer medications and times that I refused to transfer medications. So that's a little bit different case.
And
But
I'm sorry.
I think with that,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Hopefully see you in the future.
Yes.
Integration done.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hey, Brian.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, we're gonna take Dr. Curley, if you guys are okay, we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break and then we've got, I believe, Mercy. Turn it over to you, Dr. Kirtley.
Boy, it helps if I turn on my microphone as I remind everybody else. Do you guys want to introduce who you are?
Hi, Michael Thames, Director of Pharmacy, Mercy Fort Smith.
I'm Josiah Hayes, Director of Pharmacy for Mercy, Northwest Arkansas and Rogers.
So we've got a PowerPoint in front of us. Tell us what you're asking.
So we're introducing new technology that Mercy is kind of investing into. What these robots are, they're medication delivery carts or robots that can be used to deliver all sorts of things in a hospital. These range from nutrition carts for trays, food trays going to patient rooms, EVS carts for delivering and taking down linen, and also including pharmacy carts. So what we're asking for is approval for us to start using this in the state of Arkansas. The way these autonomous robots work is there's an onboard computer that the pharmacy technicians or pharmacists will maintain in terms of assigning medications to go to different nursing units on the floor. Nursing will use their BioID fingerprint to open the cart or retrieve the medication, and the robot will come back to pharmacy for the next delivery. Important reasons why this might be useful or helpful is areas in the hospital where we don't have automated or tube systems that will deliver medication throughout the hospital. Stability concerns for medications that need to go up that can't be sent to the tube stations, or other things to save nursing steps and nursing time. In the PowerPoint on slide 5, you could see what the tug systems look like. There's some with the drawers, some with doors. Again, it's all secured where medications can only be accessed through BioID from a nurse or from a pharmacy staff member. When the carts arrive to the unit, they'll message the nursing unit that they have arrived. It can be a system where it can be either a message saying, "I'm here, your delivery has arrived," or if it's a unit where the public is available or present, it could be a chime system where it doesn't announce it's present, so the public doesn't necessarily know that it's what it is or what it's there for. The database is maintained by pharmacy, so we can audit to see who's accessed the system whenever medication arrives. We can see who pulled out the medication, who scanned their fingerprints, pull out the medication, and go back and audit if there's any concerns about medications not arriving at an appropriate time or questions about delivery. I think that's kind of the summary of the robot system.
So I know you've got your policy in here and I haven't had a chance to read it all the fine print, but what about your controlled substances? Are you going to not do those via Doug, or if you are, how does that happen?
We're not planning on using controlled drugs for our tug system.
And that's the same in Fort Smith. We're not going to use
That helps.
the tug or control substances. One of the things that I would like to add, and Josiah went over partly, is the software is maintained by the pharmacy. You know, the database is, it would not be a nursing leader or a hospital administrator that would be giving access to nurses. So it would be one of the things where the biometric scanning would all be set up and maintained inside of the pharmacy.
So do you have to do that manually, or does it integrate with your Active Directory? How does you have to manually?
My understanding is we would do it. We would do it manually. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not Active Directory either. Pharmacy would take a laptop with a BioID around to the nursing units and physically assign the fingerprint to the nursing, or we can register somebody's username in the system. So the next time they make the delivery, that person would put in their ID and register their fingerprint through another nurse on the unit.
Similar to Pixis or whatever ABC you have. Yeah.
So they literally fill this in the pharmacy and it just drives up to where
It
it's
does.
gonna go?
It's pretty amazing technology. It will actually call an elevator for itself and go down to a different floor. And one of the things that we do want the board to know is that it would not be able to let itself in or out of the pharmacy. It would have to be, somebody would have to be at the pharmacy door. It would either chime or alert to a laptop that wouldn't, that way that would be a secure process. But the technology and the mapping is way above my head. It's actually very interesting though. So it'd be very helpful in Mercy Fort Smith. Our infusion center is in the four walls of the building, but is quite a distance away. And we spend quite a bit of tech labor that could be used in other ways, simply delivering meds.
So you're gonna be delivering chemo hazardous? You have a policy for swab sampling or how you're gonna decontaminate?
It
the
is.
robot?
It is in here. We've talked to Atheon about this. Other facilities are using it for hazardous materials. Obviously, you would dedicate a specific drawer for the hazardous that couldn't commingle with other medications. And then any type of spill or exposure, you know, it's listed here in the policy how we would handle that.
So right now, a tech is running it, all these various and sundry things back and forth where they go, a technician or.
I could see either a pharmacy supervisor that's a pharmacist or a technician lead that would have this role.
For Northwest Arkansas, our nurses actually come into pharmacy to pick up the deliveries for our infusion center. So this is actually save nursing time where they can actually be at the bedside taking care of the patients versus having to come to pharmacy to pick up their infusions that they need for their.
Dr. Robertson, did you have a question or comment?
I guess from my understanding from conversations with these, Joshua anyway, was that it would be, and I guess that's the only point of clarification that I'd like to ask is it's transfer from pharmacy to an area. It's not like it's going to go to an area where then a nurse has to transfer it to an automated dispensing cabinet.
Correct. No, it would not be used for filling any Omnicells or dispensing cabinet.
So it'd be patient specific type deliveries.
Correct.
All meds, patient specific.
So cart fills or first time doses, not cart fills yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just
First time
one
doses.
time.
I could see it being very beneficial, say in the ED setting when ICU is at capacity and we're boarding in the ED and we have to have patient specific meds delivered to there that couldn't be tubed or tubes are down, happens occasionally. But my plan in Fort Smith is patient specific.
And for us, only patient specific.
I've gotten a demo of these two, and that's my understanding is they're being used more and more across the country in hospitals. And it's all patient specific stuff that they're using it for.
Harold, this is your AI in pharmacy.
Right.
And it's fascinating. I mean, even when Dr. Thames, Dr. Jolly and I graduated together, but for any of us that had even a rotation back then with the VA, they had some robots that would follow the little lines around the hall for different deliveries. I don't know if they used it for drugs, but they used it for all kinds of, cleaning supplies, I think bedding and toiletries and everything else.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask that if this works with drugs being delivered for a patient's consumption, why wouldn't you be using this for meals, for example?
And I think that is the primary goal of Mercy and the relationship with Atheon and Tug is that they're going to deliver linens, they're going to deliver meals, they're going to, I'm sure there's other things that I'm not thinking of. And then pharmacy was added on at the end.
Yeah, my understanding is these were developed not necessarily as a pharmacy specific thing. You used to be like bulk supplies and things that were going up, and pharmacy kind of became a natural progression to expand into.
And you can go to your local restaurant of choice and see it in use right now. Different machine.
Well, yeah, like the train restaurant where they deliver the hamburger.
All aboard.
Some places give theirs a name. Are you guys going to name your robot? Are you going to
Well, I actually told Kevin for a small donation to the foundation that I would name one of them Kevin.
name it Kevin?
I didn't buy it. So, I tried.
We'll make that a pharmacy week activity. We'll have our department name.
Yeah.
Other questions or concerns for staff?
I think we're good. Our biggest concern was going to be controlled substances and to make sure it was, traceable and securable even for the non-controls, and they've explained that.
So I guess we're looking for a motion then to approve this new automation technology.
I'll make that motion that we approve this.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a motion by Dr. Mack and a second by Dr. Richmond. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a quick question for the board is it acceptable for board staff to sign off on someone else using this technology, or do you want to visit with whoever else wants to use it in the future?
Board approval.
I mean, do you want to visit with the next couple to make sure they're following similar guidelines? We do it as an informal rather than a full board meeting.
I think Dr. Robertson's point about setting up a pack of 10 methylpreds and then letting somebody load it into a Pyxis and taking pharmacy out. Yeah, I mean, I think the questions we asked today, patient specific, would be
Yeah, that's the main.
the main one.
If we have a couple more recent or in the near future, we'll try to get them in informal then. Be a little bit more efficient. Thank
That was easy. I mean, if they had a robot to just transfer that prescription, would be okay with it.
On schedule. Ready for amazing. Arkansas Pharmacists Association.
Pep and prep, who all is coming up? We can drag more chairs up. So if you guys will hit, you have to press it and then release it on the push, and that will turn green. If you want to tell us who all is talking to us today, and we have, the board members have just received these this morning, so I know they haven't had to fully read it, but I think that most of us understand PEP and PrEP well enough to have a good conversation.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marlene Battle, and I'm a pharmacist and a health equity coordinator with the Arkansas Pharmacists Association. Today, I have a phenomenal group of pharmacists with me who have volunteered their time to work on this protocol with us. So I have Dr. Gwen Hersick, and then I also have Dr. Haley Harrington and Dr. Jordan Murdoch. And we also have some others in the audience as well. I brought a team of experts today to assist with this. We have Dr. Holly Maples and also Dr. Abby Umfred. Okay. I don't think I missed them. Oh, sorry. Hey. And Dr. Gabriella Douglas with us today.
So I think I can, in one point, just cut that real quickly. Act 314 of 2023 gave pharmacists specific authority to directly dispense for HIV, PEP, and PrEP medications. There were a couple of interesting things in there, but it first of all ties in that it's under a statewide protocol. And a statewide protocol would therefore have to be agreed upon by the pharmacy board and the medical board. Similar to what we did with oral contraceptives, there is a second step of this where there has to be an educational process in place or program for pharmacists. This one is different because a pharmacist does not necessarily have to do the educational program prior to using the protocol. They have to do it within a year of using the protocol. And we've talked with some of these leaders that we do have that educational program coming. Like we have that coming, but the first thing was to nail down the protocol to see if this would work, was acceptable by pharmacy board, anticipating a potential later appointment with the medical board, most likely in December for potential approval there. And if the protocol is approved, it's a whole lot easier to finalize any educational program to help teach the protocol itself. So this is the protocol and they are welcome to walk us through it, or you guys ask questions, however you want to handle it, Mr. President.
So while you all are looking, I can just give a, quick overview of what we have in there. We have eligibility and inclusion, eligibility and exclusion criteria. Also, we have screening and assessment forms. Those are what we notated as Appendix A of the protocol. Now, I will say it was submitted to you as one single document, but we do have a protocol for PrEP and also one for PEP. And then we have a prescription form, a provider notification form. If, we prescribing PrEP or PEP therapy to send to the PCP or whoever is overseeing their care. And then also a patient information form that the patient would receive. And that would also provide instructions on how they should take that therapy. And verbal counseling will be offered as well. I do want to make a note that on the PrEP prophylaxis, that will be available for ages 18 and up. And then on PEP, we would like to extend that and make that available for ages 13 and up. Again, we did follow the legislation. Documentation of all services is required. And so we would maintain those records for 2 years according to the Board of Pharmacy, or if longer for insurance purposes. The legislation also required that we would include financial assistance programs for PEP and PEP. And so that can be found as Appendix B within the protocol. And then Appendix C will give a list of resources for referral to or finding providers across the state. The last page of the protocol is the example of the reporting form that is required for pharmacists to use if a patient should test positive for HIV. Then that has to be reported to the Arkansas Department of Health. And then you mentioned about the educational training. We do have more information on that. We use pretty much the same format as what we use for the oral contraceptive educational training. We use the same platform and format, and we have an outline and more information that we can provide on that as well. And then lastly, I'll just add and let you all ask your questions, is that Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield is already paying for us as far as evaluation and management of services such as oral contraceptives, smoking cessation, naloxone therapy, and point of care testing such as strep, flu, and COVID. And they also have indicated that they would include HIV, PrEP and PEP. So that would be something big as well, is that we could get paid for not only the prescription services, but evaluation and management as well.
Well, if I have a question about this where I'm from, I'm asking Dr. Harrington. So pregnancy, is it included in the protocol as well for pregnant patients?
Yes.
Okay.
And I want to say that was included as in the legislation as well for pregnancy and breastfeeding.
What would you guys like to see? Do you guys want them to go through the protocol in more detail, or do you want some time to look it over and ask questions? What would you guys like?
Would rather them just come explain. I'm trying to figure out, I know it was passed, but who's doing this? And unless I read this whole document, I'm not yet.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the very easy explanation is it's two things. One is preventive and the other is post-exposure. What they're saying is if it is preventive and you have to look at it's a decision tree, it's a more complicated decision tree than others, but for you go to page 5, which is Appendix A, you have, here's where you start your history. I mean, and you're having to go through and do an entire, personal history of the person. And then you have the decisions as to how they qualify on those questions of what type of contact they are having or engaged in currently that would qualify for that. You also look at the past medical history. You have things that you have to say you understand. Like I understand I must get an HIV test every 90 days to continue to get your PrEP prescription filled. Because at whatever point you test positive for HIV, it's no longer preventive, it's treatment, it's direct treatment, and you're being sent or connected to additional care. When you have a positive HIV test, the Department of Health also then has to get into tracking partners and everything else to try to help with those sexually transmitted diseases. It goes down page 7, the assessment tool for the staff to use, and on PrEP, which is basically preparation, not post-exposure, 18 years or older. Yes, go to number 2 are they known to be HIV positive? If it's yes, then it kicks you out of this whole thing. Like it has all of these safety stop points to where it basically says, stop, you can go no further in this decision tree. You have to get them to primary care. But if it continues down it, you get all the way through it. And then it tells you which product is going to be the preferred product. And it does talk about, is the patient pregnant or breastfeeding is number 12. Yes. If they're pregnant or breastfeeding, then Truvada is preferred. Go to number 13. Are they cis female or transgender male? Yes. Then it still tells you that. If it's no, then you have to go further. So it's a very clear decision tree for PrEP or for PEP. And you can look at the second half of this. That is the same decision tree, which is the standard for care in primary care for this.
Is this for every pharmacy to use?
Whoever wants to use it as a pharmacy. And realizing that if they want to start using this within a year of using it, according to law, within a year, they have to complete an educational program on it. In reality, most pharmacists are going to do the educational program because same thing, I could sit here and go, you know what, I'm not a HIV, PEP, or PrEP expert, but this is a very direct, delineated decision tree where I don't have to be the expert to realize how to make the correct decisions for the final treatment to follow. That's the way most of our.
And so if the pharmacist initiates PEP or PrEP, they then basically get them to their PCP for the follow-up and continuation of therapy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the goal behind this was improved access, prevent emergency department visits, which is where a lot of the PrEP especially ends up for PEP. So.
I'm confused as to where the primary care physician becomes involved in this process.
So for PrEP, it would be to continue on the pre-exposure prophylaxis for HIV. So this would be getting them quick access so they can get that protection, but they have to follow up with their PCP within 30 days to continue.
So the stuff in the protocol about monitoring and follow-up and additional testing, that's all done by the primary care physician, not the pharmacist.
Right.
The pharmacist is just the initiator. Yeah, the pharmacist is just the initiator, basically, of this process.
Yes.
And while I'm asking, let me ask one other basic question. To what extent have you looked at the extent to which the pharmacist role in this would be covered by professional liability insurance the pharmacist might have?
I can answer that. In general, what we have seen with pharmacist liability insurance, it covers the legal scope of practice for pharmacists. There have been times where our insurance has said, however, if you're doing sterile compounding, they want you to have an additional rider. Like you pay another X number of dollars and you have an additional rider because that is an area where they have seen increases in lawsuits and so forth. Thus far, to my knowledge, we have not seen riders for point of care test and treat because it is not an area where they're having lawsuits paid out or lawsuits filed for malpractice or anything else. The other thing is in this example, which Arkansas has done, where it is a very specific approach, you're using protocols that have been approved by both pharmacy and medical board, which is a great protection because it's seen as the standard of care to follow it that way.
Yeah, but of course, the other problem with the protocol is what happens if you vary from the protocol or don't follow it.
If you don't follow it, then you are probably much more susceptible to actually having an issue, first of all, with your licensure board, but also with your insurance not covering you for the standard of care.
Well, okay, maybe I'm not thinking about it right, but typically malpractice insurance covers you when you don't comply with the standard of care, hence malpractice.
Mhm.
And you're, and are you, am I understanding you correctly to say that the various statewide protocols that we have for vaccines and so forth are typically, the pharmacist is typically covered under the regular pharmacist
Yes.
liability coverage?
Yes. But if they, I mean, your liability insurance would generally cover you even when you did not necessarily follow the law,
Right.
if you missed it. If you're doing something that's outright illegal, that's when I guess I would say, you know, your liability insurance doesn't cover you if you decide to sell drugs out the back door versus I messed up something on a protocol.
Okay.
And another thing, when does the primary care, person come into play in these decision trees? Like, has the person tested positive for HIV? Yes, you go no further with the protocol if that is the answer in certain spots, and you can only refer them back to primary care or some other prescriber.
Or is there any anticipated direction to the pharmacist from the PC, the primary care physician? As a part of
I
this?
think it's possible, but I think it's more likely that there's going to be more direction from pharmacists that give early access to, especially post-exposure, and then send them. I mean, we, having friends that have worked in hospitals or in clinics, one of the things that people struggle with is I work in a clinic and I got a needle stick and I don't know where it came from. And while I'm pretty sure we didn't have anybody in clinics today that did have HIV or hepatitis or anything else, I don't know, and I can't identify where it came from, or a random needle stick of an officer on the street or someone that is cleaning up trash. Well, they under this could go to the pharmacy and get that immediate start of treatment for post-exposure before they could maybe even get in. Like hey, it happened on Saturday. Office isn't open till Tuesday because it's a holiday. We'll go ahead and get it started and then go see your primary care. I think this is going to actually help increase the number of people who are seen for these issues and then have better follow-up with their primary care.
But what I'm getting at is let's say the pharmacist is initiating care. They've taken care of the front thing. They're being monitored by the primary care physician. The primary care physician may then have some occasion to prescribe some drug, change the prescription. But at that point, the directions coming back to the pharmacist would be the same as any
other prescription.
Anything else.
Yes, sir.
And there is a piece in the protocol that requires documentation.
And it's also in there that a requirement that subsequent prescriptions for HIV PrEP will be issued by a primary care provider.
Yeah.
So that's in the
If the
legislation.
physician does change therapy, that prescription is not necessarily going to come back to the pharmacy that may have initiated the protocol.
From the Department of Health, we see working with HIV patients, providing care, perhaps the HIV population in Arkansas. A lot of the issue with PrEP and state, why we have such a low prevalence or a low prescription of PrEP is simply access to care.
Yeah.
Scheduling visits, having long waits in the ER, difficult to access these medications. So having pharmacists in rural areas and in urban areas provide this access to care is real beneficial.
One question I had, so we've worked on PEP protocols for several years. One of the things that we've seen that I've actually had to talk to Dr. Curley about in providing medications for an emergency from the ED is a lot of pharmacies don't carry, Truvada and Ozentris, those are quite expensive. I mean, would the expectation be that if you're going to provide this service that you'll have the drugs in your pharmacy?
I feel like what we could really do is set up a resource for pharmacies that would actually start be able to carrying it, so that would be more productive. I mean, it's a valid point. I mean, I had an APRN just 2 months ago. I drove 2.5 hours from a rural area just come to my pharmacy to get ice interest, because you're right, ice interest is like $3,000, especially if you get a physician that writes for a 28-day supply and you got to break a bottle. Fun times. But that being said, I think this would just open up more to be able to get access to pharmacies that actually want to participate, and make sure we have a list of pharmacies where you don't have to drive 2.5 hours, maybe just 30 minutes to an hour, but still save the cost of the ER.
Yeah.
if this pharmacy comes from or the prescription comes from another pharmacist, they can still take that to another pharmacy and get that filled, correct?
Yeah. And these are the types of situations why you have kind of the ability for a hospital system to supply an emergency medications to a local pharmacy, because, you know, especially post-exposure, that is something that needs to be treated as quickly as possible. It's similar to what we've done in Department of Health in the past with expedited partner therapy. If it's a drug that is not available, then at that point, a hospital could supply it to that local retail pharmacy to take care of that emergency need, if they've got a good relationship and are willing to do that.
And there's circumstances around post-exposure prophylaxis where you don't want to ask someone to wait or drive.
Yeah.
Or wait because of other issues, other issues that they're dealing with. So who sets you have to forgive, is it IDSA, is it CDC? Who has the guidelines?
Have the guidelines.heavy.gov, all of them are on there. They're really great on updating.
So that was my question. What happens when there is an update? Because I remember a few years ago, there was an update to the PEP prophylaxis. Do they have to come back to the board at that point to request an update to the protocol to both boards? Okay. Any other questions? We're looking for a motion to approve the protocol, and then it's going to go to the medical board.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Simpson, second by Dr. Newsom. All those in favor of approving the protocol, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Thanks for doing this. I had a real life scenario in South Arkansas a few months ago. Young man was cleaning the bathroom in the family bathroom. Picked some paper up and there was a needle in it. He got stuck. So with John's help, we called and made arrangements to get this young man taken care of, because the nearest place that I could find the medication was gonna be in Little Rock. We found out that there was some at the local hospital, and we got it to a local independent so that they could be dispensed, and he did not have to make that long trip to Little Rock. But things happen. You know, you don't know where people are going to drop those needles.
Yeah. But thank you all again for your time.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
I thought you said something.
I think next up, we've got Ms. Vales. We have a couple of emergency hearings that we have previously announced we would have some time for.
Yes, so this morning I started out with 3 emergency hearings. Now I'm down to 2. 2 have voluntarily surrendered their license. The one I have left is Haley Bradley. Her number is PT 15287. She worked as a technician in the Walmart in Texarkana. And on June 1st, 2023, Asset Protection from Walmart started an investigation of one of these 3 techs, not the one you have in front of you today, for fraudulently processing refunds through the Walmart app. That opened up another sort of a more bigger investigation, and Asset Protection reviewed closed circuit television from the pharmacy through May 3rd through July 1st. And they observed 2 pharmacy techs. Again, those 2 are not in front of you today, that were engaging in suspicious behaviors while filling controlled substances. There was an inventory done, and there was drug shortages of controlled substances. All the employees were interviewed, including Haley Bradley, who you have in front of you today for decision. She was interviewed. She denied any knowledge of why the inventory count would be short. She was asked to submit to a UA. And she told Walmart Asset Protection that she would test positive for marijuana. She was terminated on August 15th, 2023 for gross misconduct and violation of Walmart's drug-free workplace policy. We believe that's also a grounds for revocation under pharmacy board law and rules, and that the health and safety of any patients are at risk, warranting an emergency suspension of her pharmacy tech license. So that is what we are asking for today.
Any questions for Ms. Bales? We have a motion for an emergency suspension.
So moved.
We have a second. Okay. We have a motion by Dr. Newsom, second by Dr. Richmond. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
You just had one? Okay.
Oh, I thought there were two.
Okay.
All right.
Only other, let's see. So first thing I'll pass down, at the June meeting, the board had briefly discussed and had basically instructed staff to kind of draw up, it's a front and back, one page where we had a discussion, and I've been going around to the different regional meetings for APA and bringing this up as well. And for any of you on the Facebook Q&A, you can see there's a lot of discussion about tech ratio. There's three more of those. And first of all, I'll clarify that what the board had actually discussed wasn't an expansion of the tech ratio. It was a combination of the pharmacy tech ratio and the pharmacy intern ratio, where there'd be one ratio rather than two. What we had initially discussed was kind of the full page side of this that was, I say, current version redrafted. And on the back side, instead of having a separation of retail or specialty pharmacy settings and then hospital ambulatory care facility settings and basically being repetitive in the two, just combining it to pharmacist to support staff ratio, that would be one general overall statement. It's not something you have to tell me right now. This isn't a public hearing at this time, but since the board had instructed staff to continue that, the other thing we did identify it would need to cause a brief change of erasing a statement in Rule 2, I believe, that had a limited intern ratio, because part of the intent with this was, especially in the areas around the College of Pharmacy where you have multiple students with the ability to work, you don't want to say that only one intern can work with a pharmacist rather than saying two interns and two technicians or something like that. So as I think we kind of knew, this will be, some people will be all for it. Some people would be all against it. I think that some of the discussion that I've seen, at least on the Facebook Q&A, it's people are looking at as only a tech expansion rather than it's not an actual expansion of the number of support staff people you could have. It's just in outside of Little Rock, Fayetteville, and Searcy area, nobody really has interns, but they can generally in those areas. So whether it be today or tomorrow, or table it for a future date, the kind of direction I need is, if the board wants to pursue this, to start with rulemaking, official rulemaking, to refile maybe this second markup through Department of Health, Governor's Office, and everything else. We've gotten approval to discuss it originally, but we did make some changes to the exact approach of it, but the concept has been approved for discussion.
It's the same number, you're just allowing the pharmacy to choose who makes up that number?
Four people, however it works out, instead of saying it can only be up to 3 techs and only up to 1 intern, it could be 4 interns or 3 interns and 1 tech, or 2 interns and 2 techs. It could be 4 techs.
You have to do a complete new rule to get that.
I have to modify the current rule, which this is the current rule in 3. And then we did identify there's another section in 2 that limits the intern number. And the intent was to just make it a support staff ratio rather than a tech ratio and a intern ratio.
Cleaner and easier for the department.
And given, there are people that think this is going to completely change. I think this should, in theory, have less of a change than when you go from a straight tech ratio of 2 to 1 to 3 to 1 that we saw. You know, I've quite frankly seen some things of, well, when the board went to 3 to 1, that's when blank company cut everybody 32 hours. Well, that wasn't an Arkansas issue. It was a nationwide issue. Like the Arkansas ratio did not change an entire national approach for a company overall.
Are we gonna see an issue like unintended consequence here? Could we see an issue where it's harder for interns to get experience because of this change? You know, going back to when we went from 2 technicians to 3 technicians, I always felt like the intern not counting was kind of as a benefit to technicians, not so much to punish other pharmacies. I thought of it as, hey, we're doing this as good for interns because we want them to have experience before they go out there into the real world. And unintended, do we kind of hurt their job opportunities by doing this? Again, unintentionally.
I don't know. And I mean, and the interesting thing is for most interns, I've had a couple people that would say, you know, well, they get one in the summer sometimes somewhere else. And generally during the school year, it's either, you know, some classes have the morning they could work, some classes have the afternoon they could work. And then on the weekend, it was a, you know, do you get to work or I get to work, which kind of limited them. But I don't know, it could. We also have an instance in Arkansas, but across the nation where the number of interns in pharmacy schools has reduced by a third. I mean, for any of you that heard, you know, Dean Stowe would talk about at the regional meetings, you know, if you look at the enrollment in classes, you know, the high point we ever had of a graduating class was right at 15,000. But like the incoming class for 27 looks like it's probably going to be right under 10,000 people.
What is that in Arkansas?
Arkansas, I think that she said her average class right now is 85 students out of the potential 120.
Yeah.
And but it ranges, like there's a class with 95 in it and a class with like 60 in it. So right now UAMS, instead of having at one point their high was, you know, 480 students roughly at UAMS and 240 at Harding. I don't know how many there are at Harding right now, but I think it's half that. And so we've had, you know, a third reduction at UAMS where it's about or a fourth, a third, 320 students in the 4 years at UAMS and about 130 at Harding. Is that about right? So we've gone from 720 interns to basically 450.
What year did UAMS expect?
I think it was like 2000 class of 04. So it was when we were in school. So we graduated in 02 and our class size was 75 was the incoming class. And then it went to 90 a couple of years after us. And then not long after that, I don't know for your year,
It was full 120. I mean, it changed.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, it could be 125, it could be 115, but the number was 120.
That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking is somewhere around 2004 to 2006. I don't remember.
Yeah, was the increase. And we've got comments on, you know, some of the Facebook that, well, all the colleges should just reduce students to help with pharmacist jobs to increase salaries. I'm like, well, I comments like, if you look at the data, the pharmacy schools are down a third like that. Like, I understand that you're saying the applicant pool has reduced greatly. I mean, when many of us applied to pharmacy school, it was 3 applicants per position. And now nationwide, it's basically 1 to 1. And not all of the people applying are going to qualify to go to pharmacy school. I mean, I know Rodney's worked very hard on, you know, exploring new recruiting options. It's why most of our colleges are basically telling pharmacists, like, you know, good kids in your town that you need to tell them about this profession. Like, we want good applicants coming in that are interested. And, you know, it's part of the reason why we've done a lot of work here at the board, helping fund those rural programs, because we're losing rural pharmacies and creating pharmacy deserts or partial pharmacy deserts, where us having to support student pharmacists who want to go back to rural Arkansas is helping to keep that alive. I think it's had a significant impact.
Part of your argument, kind of looking at the unintended effect, part of your argument in terms of supporting this actually argues the other way, in that, like you said, interns are accessible in areas in close proximity to pharmacy schools. So on that argument, what basically you're saying is, except for White County and Pulaski County, we have increased the tech ratio for the rest of the state to 4-1.
Yeah.
And by increasing the number of techs you can use, that decreases potentially the need for pharmacists. And we know there are certain organizations that will max that out to the limit. So I'm just concerned that would have an adverse effect on the pharmacist market.
That's my concern as well.
And
Workload, you know, it'll create additional workflow challenges for.
And one thing, when people have asked for this, they pointed out that the expansion of tech duties for immunizations changed the workflow on techs. And I don't know how many of you guys use pharmacy technicians in that, but it was something that techs couldn't do until a couple of years ago in Arkansas. Some states had that. And I'm not saying as an argument either side, it was just a factual thing of, you know, I was doing real good with my workflow, but then with the increased demand for immunizations, especially during COVID, like, I actually lost staff by trying to do this other service while supervising both. And I defer to Brandon, could tell us more than anybody. I'll put him on the spot of, you know, how many stores are actually fully using 3 or 1 or anything like that.
So, Dr. Curley, I know you and I talked about this earlier in the year. I actually kind of started a spreadsheet keeping up probably the first 50 to 60 inspections I did of the year with how many support staff were present during my time of inspection. And there were some where there were single pharmacists with no additional help. But in that, there was maybe a quarter or less that actually utilized a full 3-to-1.
Is there a breakdown in your spreadsheet of what type store, what independent versus
Yes, ma'am.
others, that type of thing?
Yes, ma'am.
And what do you see in that?
Independents probably are better staffed in certain areas with slightly larger populations. Even in small towns, though, somewhere like Smackover, there may be 3 technicians to 1 pharmacist. Some of the chains are very well staffed as well when I go in. It just really kind of depends on the day and time that I'm in.
So it's about a quarter are utilizing what they could use?
I would say for my inspections, probably a quarter, maybe slightly more, maybe.
How many pharmacies, I think you're tracking this, but how many pharmacies do you see interns actually working at? I mean, I know in Pulaski County, you see a number, but you also see them on rotations, but outside of here.
That's one of the things that upsets me more than anything, because I enjoy taking them when I'm there inspecting and actually doing the inspection with them to educate them, and not very often at all. So this year, I've probably encountered half a dozen interns that I've actually been able to spend some time with on an inspection.
I know and following the trend nationally, you know, because interns don't have to log hours in pharmacy school like many of us did, you know, we do hear anecdotally that there are not as many interns working during pharmacy school. And I don't know how true that actually is, but I think
You graduate pharmacy school without working in a pharmacy.
do rotations.
Yeah. Because they increased the rotations with they now have IPPEs and APPs. In the introductory practice, you spend a month in community and a month in basically some sort of hospital system before your fourth year. And so that added like 320 hours of that type of practice. So whereas when we were in school, I mean, most of us, it was, 1440 hours or something like that. Now it's more like 1720, 1740, something like that that's required. And most pharmacy schools have a whole extra rotation built in, so another 160 hours.
I was worried about it when the required hours changed, just operationally, because we depend on our interns to do things that nobody else is doing that day, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't see a dip. For me.
So Dr.
I've got an
Jolly,
advantage because I'm connected to the college.
Sure. Come out of class and come to work.
Yeah, so we love our student interns. I think for a place like a hospital that utilizes several interns, this will kind of be a wash. I think it's going to be places that don't typically have interns that it's going to, it's going to increase the ratio for that pharmacist. But
Kind of a tangent. One of the complaints that I saw somebody make was just that they're using a pharmacist to supervise a tech to give immunizations. And so is that why do we have that requirement where a pharmacist has to physically observe a tech giving immunization?
So when people ask the specific question, what you look at is in Rule 3, there are specific definitions and Rule 2 for supervision. And I believe it's actually, or I must tell you this.
Seems like we've expanded the tech role, but we've still maintained the requirement for.
So it starts in, that's not it. The statutory definition of supervision by law, not even rule, means under the direct charge or direction of, and does not contemplate any continued absence of such supervision. I mean, it's pretty direct in that it means you are there with them under the direct charge and direction, and you're not absent of supervision. When we go forth and then further define it by rule, unlawful proprietor without supervision of a licensed pharmacist. I mean, it's in there a whole bunch of times. Intern. Only in here like 50 times. We have supervision for when people have practice after inactivity, they have to be supervised by a pharmacist. So a pharmacist has been out of practice for a period of time and reinstates their license. And then we do that with support group when someone goes back for up to 20 hours a week, like you approved earlier today. During that 20 hours a week, part of their return to practice, they're supervised. So they prevents them from being left alone as a standalone pharmacist. When you get to Rule 2, which is about interns, supervision means a licensed pharmacist and or certified preceptor supervises the practical experience of a licensed intern, both personal and physical supervision, actually gives instruction to the intern obtain the experience. When you get to the technicians, the very first two things in pharmacy technician rule 3, supervision means the responsible pharmacist must be physically present to observe, direct, and supervise the pharmacy technician at all times when the pharmacy technician performs acts specified in the rule. Supervising pharmacist totally and absolutely responsible for the actions of the pharmacy technician. What we have generally said in practice is that means you're in eyesight and earshot of whatever is going on. So the problem with that is you can't say we're in this room and I'm going to send a technician to this conference room back here to do whatever. Like you have to be there. Like if the patient goes, oh my gosh, that's not right or something, you need to be able to look over and see it. And we've had some people express, well, that's a problem with HIPAA because I want them in a closed room or something else. And so if you ask the Board of Pharmacy the specific question, here's what the legal, law, statutory definition and the rule definitions of it are, which is, a high standard. but we don't necessarily mean you have to be standing over their shoulder to do it.
They required to be,
Be what?
or HIPAA, are they not required to be partitioned off
From the rest of the public. I mean, it's one of those things where you are generally looking at, if you're counseling them or anything else, you can't have it where everyone else can hear what's going on. But at the same time, you have clinics all the time that, Department of Health, drive-through clinics, everything else. So it's not that they have to be in a blinded room. So I'm giving this to you guys. You don't have to make a decision on it today. You may say, I want to think about this and research it and bring it back up at the next meeting. You may tell me, start the process and we'll see what happens in public comment. It's your call on that stuff.
You don't have a statutory change that initiated this. This was a, different request before the board looking at rural Arkansas. And a lot of it was like looking at rural Arkansas having an unfair disadvantage compared to the areas that have colleges of pharmacy. And with the change of, I have a constant request that I get periodically from different people of, when are you going to change that tech ratio? When are you going to change that tech ratio? Or do away with it. I told someone at a national meeting that like, hey, well, I'll just tell you, the board is looking at and discussing this. They're like, oh, well, that's good, but the right ratio is 6 to 1 techs. And then I've had someone else say, well, the perfect ratio is, why is there a ratio?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, in the realm of what we can control, if you said there's an unlimited ratio and only the pharmacist working in the pharmacy can determine that, that's one thing, but that's not how the world works.
I don't see why this wouldn't be good to get started. I think where the comment's gonna come in is, oh, we also need to change the number and you also need, I think that will be, I know that isn't what you're trying to do here, but I think that will be some of the comments.
Well, you're going to have comments from people that feel very strongly that no change should happen, that would potentially have any more support staff in a store, whether it be here or, in a urban, suburban, or rural area. You'll have some people come in and say, actually, you've done this wrong. You should have said it's a 2 to 1 ratio for all staff members, all support staff members. There's an entire gamut of opinions on this.
So isn't that one good way to get started, is start it and see what happens?
Yeah, I would say let's move this along in the rulemaking process and see what happens.
Once you initiate it, there's
can-
going to be a public comment period.
There's a
right?
public comment. We would probably set up, depending on how fast we can get paperwork. The public comment period may be like the February board meeting. I don't foresee it happening by the end of the year at this point, unless you're really pushing for a quick one, but that would give time for other conversations and stuff to happen. And you could get in the middle of that public comment period. Now, I'll tell you, like I said, I can show you the thing. It's a tremendous amount of paperwork for staff, but you could get there to that point and go, you know what, we've heard enough for this. We're dropping it. We're going to walk away, and we may talk about it again in the future. You may say proceed. It's up to the board on that.
I think 3 to 4 is ideal.
By combining it.
What you have here will work. It'll help a lot of people. But it's start. What are your thoughts?
I was commenting.
Why are you against it?
Because I think that in essence, except for White County and Pulaski County, we're de facto increasing the ratio from 1 to 4. Because there are a limited number of interns that frankly are in 2 local areas, but the other 75 counties, you increase the ratio to 4 to 1.
But you're right, because they're not able to utilize the current 3-1 plus 1. That's
Your concern.
That's part of it.
I think the other side, I'm not playing devil's advocate. The other side is the argument that the rural areas are making, in that they don't enjoy, aren't able to take advantage of the 3+1 because they don't There's a finite number of interns. There's
Yeah.
theoretically an infinite number of technicians.
Right.
There's a finite number of interns and they're all practicing within a limited geographic region.
We don't get the interns, but I could use that one extra person to help. It's just point of view and where you sit in the state. Of course, we got an intern yesterday and she was just there. She's, they're technically at the hospital, but she's coming up to us for 2 hours a day to get some retail in.
Rotation or work?
I don't know. I didn't ask any
Yeah,
details.
if it-
I was just happy to see her walk in. Yesterday about between 4 and 5.
If it's rotation, they don't count the ratio. If it's IPPE, like introductory practice or senior rotation, they don't count in the ratio at all.
Okay, so today are we taking an up down vote on moving forward with the rulemaking process? Thereby we're approving.
Today, you're making basically one of two choices, either park this and think about it some more, or direct staff to start the rulemaking process on, the language that we had come up with as the combination.
And I think it's important that if we move it forward, we're not saying that we're necessarily in favor of this change.
It's a discussion.
We're basically wanting to see what other people think about it and what other arguments there are.
That's a good question. So will we have will the board have another opportunity to vote on the change?
Yes, what that would mean is we would do the paperwork, and a very brief version of this. What we've already done with this previously was at board direction to try to pursue it, sending it through Department of Health and Governor's Office to basically get approval that this could be something that could be done, to get approval to discuss it, basically, which is kind of where we are now. If you approve it for promulgation, we would do with this one and then do the change to the other rule 2 to delete the 1-to-1 limitation on interns, and then file those. And it goes back through Department of Health, back through the Governor's Office for approval to file. And then it would have to be filed with like Secretary of State, Bureau of Legislative Research, and sent out and posted for public comment period. Public comment period has to last at least 30 days is a minimum. We have always ended our public comment periods during some sort of a board meeting so that people could actually show up and make verbal comments as well as any written comments that were submitted. I would say that, the easiest way to do that would be to say it's during the February board meeting where we know we already have a solid date, rather than saying, hey, we're going to set 15 minutes for a board meeting or 30 minutes for a board meeting and trying to do it via Zoom. It's not as good of an interaction that way.
Okay, so we've got 3 potential motions. Got a motion to.
I think you have one motion. And the one motion is if someone wants to motion to proceed with it, that motion either passes or fails.
Okay.
If that motion passes, that gives direction to staff. If it fails, it's parked. The same motion could be, we want to park it and come back and visit it later. And if that motion passes, it's parked. And we don't do any other filing for it. So one motion is going to make the decision.
I'll step out on the ledge here, see what y'all do to me. I would like to recommend board move forward with it because we have a lot of more opportunity to hear what other people think and comments, et cetera. So I would say let's potentially move forward.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
So that's a motion to move forward with the rulemaking process, promulgation, whatever. Okay, so we have a second. Okay, so those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying that. Okay, yeah. Just start down there and come this way. Okay.
Aye.
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 Okay. Ayes have it. The motion passes.
So what we will do as staff is I will draw this up. I imagine that your preference is for the shorter version instead of having 2 parallel paragraphs that are repetitive. So we're actually deleting a quarter page of rule. That's funny. So I'll start our process for that, and I'll just have to see how that process goes. You know, it's something that we may be able to get approved fairly quickly. If it gets hung up, if Department of Health, Governor's Office say, we don't want to entertain this at this time, it also does not proceed. So we'll follow those guidelines. We have had, as of recent, different issue that I know Dr. McCready wanted me to bring up. We've had some people requesting to get technician permits that are pharmacists in other states to come train people on how to use computer systems. And I'm not going to name corporations or anything else, but it seemed very strange to both of us that someone would try to get a tech permit to come train a pharmacist when they have a pharmacist license in another state. And I think the concern of staff is, I know how I am. Dr. McCready, I think, would agree. I think Dr. Holland would agree that sooner or later, the risk is if I'm licensed as a pharmacist, I can do anything a pharmacist can do. I can reach over your shoulder, show you how to manipulate something. I'm going to help in any ratio consideration rather than hurt it. But if you have someone saying, I'm a technician and telling you over your shoulder how to do everything, in some ways, that's arguably more the practice of pharmacist work rather than pharmacy technician work. Our initial gut reaction was, why don't you just get a pharmacist license? And I think it's a money issue because you have to file for reciprocity and you have to get a pharmacist license. So it's an expense to NAB with NABP and expense with the board, but you would have protection to act as a pharmacist and actually take over the keyboard or help explain why the decisions are that way or anything else. We want to bring it up to you guys and see if you had strong feelings either way.
I think my concern is letting someone who's used to practicing at the top of a license get a lower level of top of practice. And how do you regulate? I mean, the tendency is going to be to go to the top.
That's where you practice.
I believe there are several states that actually say you cannot get a license lower than your
There are.
license.
My question.
And I just don't see any reason we would allow that.
Not to back up the conversation, that's part of the discussion on the intern thing is we traditionally have interns that keep a tech permit so that they can work with another intern. But we just have not had pharmacists that we've been aware of ask for a lower level of permit. I mean, the board could say by policy, you know, without board approval, staff is not to approve a technician permit for someone licensed as a pharmacist elsewhere. And that way they got to come before the board either way.
Well, to me, one differentiation between, because we've had student interns also get their technician permits as well. That's not to try to do anything illegal or anything along those lines. Sometimes they just have both.
Yeah.
Because they started off working as but those two are not by, correct me if I'm wrong, those aren't by examination. Whereas
No,
a
they're
licensure
not.
of a pharmacist is by examination.
Yes.
And to me, that's a different level of licensure.
And we have had people that have graduated pharmacy school that were not able to pass NAPLEX that kept a tech permit because they're not a pharmacist. But if you've been a licensed pharmacist in another state, I mean, it's very weird to us.
So some of the people that came for reciprocity today were already operating as pharmacists under a temporary license.
Yes.
What is that?
So here's a temporary license. You send your paperwork to the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy for reciprocity. You get your application with us. You go to the fingerprint harvester. We give our law test basically whatever Tuesday or Thursday you want to take it. And if you need a temporary, like people that are moving here or they're trying to make absolutely sure that they're getting cross coverage to be the Arkansas pharmacist for something, then while you're here taking your test, we will get you in touch via phone with one of the board members for a brief interview. And they'll talk to you about what is it you're doing? Why do you need this temporary license? I mean, oftentimes we get Dr. Newsome, Dr. Max, and a bunch of these, Dr. Richmond. And then they will say, okay, I will approve your temporary permit. And then the last thing they do is they have an official appearance via reciprocity today to turn it from temporary to permanent.
Temporary license be an alternative to a technician license if they wanted?
Well, we've already offered. Like, if you're trying to come into Arkansas to work, like when COVID happened and there was a thing about, well, we need to waive all requirements for people from other states to come work here. I said, well, wait a minute, look. If we take 15 pharmacists from Arkansas and send them elsewhere in the world and take 15 pharmacists from elsewhere to bring them to Arkansas, we're just spreading germs. Like we've got our germs, you've got your germs. Why don't we keep what we've got and not travel, And what we said was, and I've got a couple other directions we talked about, it's like, if you have someone that on an emergency basis needs a temporary license, I bet we could turn around in 24 hours if they will get their NABP, get their fingerprints done, come to my office. We're open 5 days a week, 8 to 4:30. We will give you the test whatever day you're ready. If they can pass the test, which we give them free access to the review, we can process a pharmacist license legitimately in 2 or 3 days.
Right.
No, if need be, we would do it.
Could you explain why you need a license or a permit to train? Is it because you're working with real patient data? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're behind the counter in a pharmacy.
So do you need there may be more discussion, but I'm just asking, do you need a motion on that?
I'm trying to figure how y'all want us to handle it as staff.
What I'm hearing is guidance unless there's differing opinions is they can't step down into a lower level of licensure or registration.
What we would say with that is if we discover they're a pharmacist in another state, we would tell from staff, we just won't process it. And if you really feel strongly you want a technician permit, you can come meet with the board at a future date. Otherwise, we will help you get a pharmacist license.
Like that. And is that written down? Do we need to put that on our books?
What's
So
the
that won't
price?
be happening. Because right now, stuff is saying you can do it, and stuff is saying we can't do it. So we need to put something down saying you can't do it.
We could have it as a policy, and in future rulemaking, next time we're in the, rule 2, we could add that in.
Please, because we need to get it written down.
Yeah. I can put that in my request. It may take a minute of, I have to see where we would fit it.
Put it in the ratio.
I know, I'm saying like it will be in 2 and we'll be in 3. I mean, you could say that, if you're licensed as a pharmacist in the US, you're not eligible for a technician permit or something like that. Right. Or put in the pharmacist that, if you've been a licensed pharmacist elsewhere, eligible for reciprocity, you can't do that.
Is it a cost issue?
I think it's a cost and a speed issue. I think some people don't want to have to come here and take our test. That's a jurisprudence exam, and a technician permit is going to cost them $140 versus $400.
They don't have to really learn.
Right.
But if they're training somebody on a computer system and they're training somebody on how to do a therapeutic substitution.
Only pharmacists can do that.
Right.
I
I can
think
see all kinds of,
Yeah.
I can just imagine all kinds of conflicts. Now, I don't know what computer system we're talking about. I'm thinking of my own, but there are things that we have to train pharmacists on that are very specific to pharmacist duties. And if I'm training someone and I have that knowledge as a pharmacist, I'm, so.
Different risk.
Yeah.
I mean, even just techs in Arkansas, they're really actually techs in Arkansas and do everything a pharmacist can do. So you're letting this, essentially, if you're training a pharmacist, you're kind of letting a tech come in and do pharmacist function through this other person they're trying to teach. So that just doesn't make any sense.
So what is the alternative, or other companies, as a specific company or group? Are the other companies just not licensed at all?
No, I think they're using pharmacists. I don't know what, I don't know what I don't know about it, but when we got a couple of calls, Brent and I are looking at each other like, this is weird. Like, and we talked to one of them, and one of them said, well, my company told me just to get a technician permit with you. I'm fine getting a pharmacist permit. And then I think some other phone calls were made like, well, no, they just want me to get a tech permit. We're going, I'm not sure we're comfortable with this.
Can they train them virtually? From their home state?
AI can train them.
I mean, if they're gonna train them think they're working, like, I don't really.
Well, the most bizarre thing to me is we have to have someone that's not licensed from another state come in to train people. I genuinely don't understand that, but
Well, for 25 years, I went all across the country training lawyers how to practice law. And I've never been licensed anywhere except in Arkansas. So I don't think training people is.
the practice, yeah. You weren't doing it, you weren't representing clients in court.
That's exactly
That
right. We are dealing with specific
Yeah.
fact situation, patients, client situation.
Yeah.
You can create training environments that have no PHI in it, though. I don't know. Okay, so motion to adjourn, or do we have anything?
Well, do we have any other things, like tomorrow might be kind of lengthy with all hearings? Is there gonna be any other? We have a little bit.
I don't have any other discussion. I mean, Dr. McCray was just bringing up, you guys heard me ask several facilities today whether or not they would supply controlled substances in Arkansas, because I can tell you there's a significant undercurrent of pharmacies in Arkansas that are being cut off on their controls, and many of them feel like they are being limited in their controlled substances because their own patients' non-controlled substances are being supplied by pharmacies that will not offer controlled substances. I know when we talked about the endorsement process for health systems upon discharge, I thought it was a good idea, but the board thought it was a good idea. If you're going to offer this, you have to offer whatever the patient needs are, including controlled substances. I will not be surprised if there isn't some future bill at some point to say, if you're going to have a pharmacy license in Arkansas and you're trying to give, specialty pharmacies different because there's not a whole lot of specialty controls, but you're trying to do maintenance meds and everything else, you can't do it unless you'll offer to cover the controlled substance needs and non-controlled the patients, because you can't just have controlled substances at local supply with everything else being off, because the wholesaler supply side will not sustain that. It's not going to work.
Okay, I've got a question. We had a company that shut their pharmacy down. They're mostly in South Arkansas. And DEA did not give expansions to the local pharmacies to absorb the controlled drugs that those pharmacies were distributing.
Yep.
And it's a big mess, and it affects patient safety.
It's the whole, and technically it's the wholesalers. The wholesalers do not tell you what your threshold is, because under the injunctive relief, they cannot tell you what your threshold number is. But I know that, John Vincent at the association has had a lot of discussions of, look, we need good contacts with these wholesale companies, because they're extenuating circumstances like that. When we had one closer to here that, they're filling 1,000 prescriptions a day, even if they close and sell their files, there is a rearrangement. Not all the patients went to one place. And even if they do all go to one place, that is a gigantic change in the actual needs of supply. So as that settles out, it's a crazy thing.
But it's been 2 months now.
Yeah, I'm hearing all kinds of shortages out of South Arkansas.
Right. Still not so.
Yeah.
Is that prescription something we can do?
I don't know. The thing about any rule, and this is someone will get mad at me when they go replay this on YouTube, but being a scholar of the legislature, what percentage of the people need to agree with you to get a law passed? 50% plus one. I mean, this is just, I don't mean to say that in a flippant manner, but for a rule, not only do you have to, basically have buy-in from the board, Department of Health, the governor's office, then it goes to an entirely different political process where you almost need unanimous support for rules to get changed. So a lot of the discussion you have with rules is this in the specific given authority of a board? If not, should it have to be in the specific governable authority of the board, or is it something they can adopt under their broad rulemaking authority? And then it's who's going to be for it and who's going to fight it, and how's that going to play out? In general, most boards at this point do not pursue a specific rule unless it's something they already have a rule on, or unless they have some sort of legislative direction for a rule.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fascinating thing. I've had a lot of people that have said, well, you know, this state passed this rule about working conditions. Why aren't you doing this in Arkansas? And I'm like, well, you need to back up a step. And here's the message that went out from that state. And here's the law that gave them that authority and actually charged them with coming up with a rule. And it's a different issue. I'm like, well, they have specific statutory authority in that realm that we don't have. Like, so if you really want that, that's a legislative issue, not a board of pharmacy issue.
Unrelated question, possibly Brandon and you could, and Brendan, could explain to us. All I heard last week at a meeting was semaglutide and
Oh my
everything that may or may not be going on everywhere. So is anything going on in Arkansas? Is there, do we need to know anything?
I'm going to say, and I think it's a fairly safe statement, we are not aware of anyone doing sterile compounding of semaglutide. I'm aware of one pharmacy that will take commercial oral semaglutide and recompound it into a different dosage form or strength. We are aware that there are companies shipping compounded semaglutide in, and we are aware or have been given information that some of them are not licensed with us, which we are working on shutting down. There are massive efforts across the United States, I would say, of getting something done about this. There's a great deal of frustration that if this is not a viable copy of the commercial product with the right ingredients, then that is an FDA issue, and the FDA should be taking action on the distribution of those chemicals being introduced into human supply, because there's hardly a day that goes by on Facebook I don't get an ad for some sort of industrial chemical that is semaglutide or tirzepatide or something like that, which is not intended for human use. But we have clinics around the state, and we're hearing even places that aren't medical clinics that are in possession of these industrial chemicals or allegedly compounded human products and giving them to people. And we don't have authority over not pharmacies. So we have reached out to other boards. I'll tell you that almost invariably, almost every time, I struggle to think of a time that we've had a physician call us and ask what's going on with these compounded products, that every time we had that discussion, the physician's like, who would do this? And they think this sounds crazy when they understand the science with their medical background and medicinal chemistry and everything else. We start talking about base chemicals and industrial chemicals and everything else. They're like, I'm not going to touch this. Y'all got to shut this down. I'm going, well, I only have authority over the pharmacy side of it. Medical board has authority over physicians and PAs. Nursing board has authority over APRNs.
I know we at least had one incident where some of these pharmacies from out of state are just robo-faxing any clinic they hear that's doing this. And they're receiving this fax, hey, you can get tirzepatide 4 month supply for $250. So we pursue that and we get an outcome with it, which was great. But we don't know if we don't, as he already said, we don't know what we don't know. So
as far as we know, the pharmacies in Arkansas.
They won't touch it.
They're not touching it, even compounded.
No, that's, specifically compounded. We have one pharmacy taking the commercial oral product that I'm aware of and making it into a different dose based on prescriber input. And I'm telling you, I don't know that that's right either, because the commercial product has lines in that's not to be chewed or crushed. They won't tell us if it's because of of absorption of water that affects it, or if it's needs delayed release or what. So could be a dose dump, could be who knows what.
But if Arkansas patients, they're talking to a doctor, I guess, from another state.
No, it's happening here.
They're talking to doctors here.
That's not
somebody
doctors.
out of state is sending them.
It appears to us that there are business models, mainly with APRNs, where they are obtaining these products from out-of-state entities. I think pharmacies, but I think some of them are not even licensed with us. And those pharmacies are not following our rules, or we believe FDA guidelines either. And everybody's making money, so nobody's complaining about it. And there's no telling what damage that has done to patients.
And they're bringing it into the or businesses, testing or whatever.
Or dispensing, which they don't have the authority to dispense. It's a mess. It's just, we've done our best to educate people and try to get it shut down, but it's illegal for us to try to take action on people that we don't have that authority over. But I mean, the people who are going to make a fortune off this are going to be the attorneys that sue them. I mean, I get ads already. If you've been disaffected by semaglutide, here's this class action lawsuit. And when they have products that are not commercial products and they weren't shipped into the state legally, or they were not dispensed legally, you talk about malpractice insurance, there's going to be some cash flow going on it.
It's big in every state.
Oh, it is. Yeah, we heard
Yeah.
last week. I think everybody's struggling with that. And I keep getting questions of, when's the state of Arkansas going to put out a guideline that pharmacies can't do this? And I'm like, well, I don't have pharmacies in Arkansas doing this. And I don't necessarily have full visibility of who outside the state is doing it and whether or not they have a license with us. We've had some that have permits with us that say they're following all the guidelines to duplicate that commercially available product via FDA. And if they are, good for them. But I also know of cases in other states where they've had super potent products and horrific patient outcomes.
I did hear several states say the medical board, the nursing board, and the pharmacy board are all working together and putting together things to help.
Yep.
So you would only worry about the pharmacies, and maybe you don't have any, but it would get the medical board involved in it.
I think our side of the street is clean on this. What else you got?
But our two board members enjoyed our new board members enjoyed their first day.
You need to ask them after their second day.
Yeah, today was easy day.
Yeah, you'll see tomorrow.
Everybody laughs.
Start one,
9 o'clock tomorrow, 8:30, 8:30 tomorrow.
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
I thought it was not.
I'm thinking 9:30, 8:30. It's gonna be a long day.
It looks like to approximately what time?
You didn't ask everybody to introduce themselves.
I've been watching Suits, but.
All right, I move we adjourn.
Second. Those in favor?
Sounds good.
Yeah.